What is up, Wizards fans? Welcome to the biggest night of the year if you're a Wizards fan. Unfortunately, no, it's not the NBA championship. No, it's not the NBA finals. It's the NBA draft. Our single most important day of the year. It's Christmas in June. Joining me here, my guy, Kevin Broom. Kevin, I'm excited. I still wish it was the first or the second pick, but I'll take 6 and 18, all things considered.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely wish it was one or two. One especially would have been nice in this draft, but we will take the sixth. As I wrote today at Bullets Forever, the guy they end up picking at six might have been the guy they picked at 3 or 4 or 5 or 7 or 8 if they had conceivably moved down that far. So, same guy. It's once you get past the top two, really the top one, it's kind of a big morass of guys who are kind of about the same in the likelihood that they're going to become high quality NBA players.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Maybe before we get into actual draft stuff here a little bit, which we're just about that time, just, I don't know, quick thoughts on the Jordan Poole trade. Wizards send he and Sadiq Bey and the 40th pick in this year's draft out for CJ McCollum, Kelly Olynyk, which feels gross even saying out loud, and a pick to be named at a future time. So just immediate reaction to that.
So my understanding is a couple of things. One of them being that this is McCollum and Olynyk are expiring.
Yep.
Is that correct? So yeah, I think it's interesting on a lot of levels. One of them being the Wizards are getting. I had seen reported there was a second round pick that they'd be getting, and it's pretty clear they decided that cap space and flexibility was going to be more valuable to the team long term than Jordan Poole. I mean, there's really no other way to look at that other than because that's what they did. They traded him.
Which is shocking, Kevin, because I spent all year hearing how amazing Jordan Poole was. So I don't know. I was personally a little surprised they couldn't get anything back for him other than essentially a salary dump. I'm not mad at it in the long term. I like the flexibility, but I just thought we'd get something. Like, I think there was maybe something there with Sadiq Bey. I don't like giving up draft picks, even if they're 1-for-1. So you're basically, it's a dump. And that's a little surprising to me.
Yeah, I agree. I thought that they would get something for them. I really thought that he was worth a, first round pick in the 20s and that they would be able to get that for him.
Yep.
And it could be that what they would have had to take back in terms of salary and stuff like that meant that it just wasn't worth it to them long term. And, it could be that they're also looking at this as the first in a series of moves because, one of the things they've done now is they've joined Brooklyn in the, hey, we've got some cap space, we can take on some salary type deal. So maybe there are some other moves that they'll be making where they'll bring in some picks in exchange for their cap space.
Which I hope is the case, that this is a move to just continue to accumulate draft assets and maybe not take on long-term money through the 2030s or whatever, but for another year or two to give some team a blank slate and give them some cap space, I think makes a lot of sense. If this is a Ted is getting impatient, so now we got to start trying to win next year kind of thing with our cap space, a little less excited, or year after next kind of thing. I like that a little bit less, but we'll see how that goes.
Yeah. All right. I can still hear you. I just need to adjust my setup here a little bit. So
yeah, no worries.
Give me just a second.
All good. Keep doing what you're doing. Couple questions in the chat here already. Well, one. Good comment from Ite. I feel like I always say your name wrong. I'm sorry, man. You're gonna have to tell me phonetically how to say it. But Bey goes wherever Troy Weaver goes. That's really been the case so far. Is that just, I don't know. Troy Weaver's got a thing for Sadiq Bey. They're tight. They're boys. He discovered him. I don't know what the case may be. But I was excited about seeing Sadiq Bey in a Wizards uniform, just as having another DC guy, here on the roster, but that's okay. Bub's holding it down. We'll see how tonight works out. Might be a certain local guy that ends up on the team. I'm not trying to be two-faced about this. If you follow the show, I haven't loved the Derek Queen at 6 to Wizards idea for a while. Would love Derek Queen, lottery-ish and after. So if they can get him at 18, great, which is what the Kevin O'Connor Intel-based mock draft had today. That would be pretty interesting. And then also, we'll see what that ultimately looks like if they want to get aggressive and try to move up. And having this year's pick would be maybe helpful to do that in the 40s to try to move them up. Josue said Derek Queen at 7 per Jonathan Gavoni is a possibility. That's pretty interesting. My guy Al, I'm feeling great. I hope you're feeling great as well. We should have lots to talk about at Hoops this year if they nail this pick. So we'll see. Not really probably going to be a lot to talk about in the stream in terms of the actual draft goes. I think the first two are going to be pretty close to chalk. So ultimately, we'll see how that goes. I can't see full usernames from Twitter on the StreamYard here, but it says P. So whoever that may be, hope that New Orleans won't leapfrog us for Ace by getting the number 4 pick. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see who ultimately tries to do what. From Farzi, my hot take is the Wizards will have only one rookie this season. Yeah, I was definitely pretty confident they weren't going to end up with 3. We'll see, yeah, if they can package these 2 and move up, or maybe they get out of 18 and roll that over for a pick in next year's draft. That'll be pretty interesting here as well. And yeah, I don't know. I think that's really going to be like the big story of this draft. I think it's kind of less about who they take at 6 or 18 or 6 and 18, and more about if they get creative and are able to move this around and try to get some options here for them as we go. Flicky asked who we're taking at 18. I threw some names out there the other night. I expect it to be a guard or a wing at 6 personally, but that could change. I don't love the Kaman Malawach pick at 6 personally. I don't have anything against him as a prospect. It's just not the way I'd go from a team building perspective. So I expect maybe they try to get a big at 18. You just got to have somebody else out there other than Star and some of the other roster filler they'll ultimately put around him. However long Rashawn Holmes and people like that are on the roster, they don't seem to fully be invested in Tristan Vukcevic as a long-term member, of this roster, which maybe changes, or he has a good offseason or camp or whatever, and they kind of double down on him. But just given his contract situation and things like that, I just, I'm not really seeing the love from them to him. So they got to have somebody else to bolster that roster, and maybe they just get a cheap free agent to kind of keep him moving forward. But I do like the idea of taking somebody as a big at 18, and we'll see ultimately what that looks like. I love Asa Newell. I think he would be really, really underrated if he drops to 18. I think that'd be a great pickup for them. Local guy Thomas Sorber is a name that's drawn some attention here, and a lot of people suggesting that he probably won't still be around at 18. We'll see what that looks like. There are only so many bigs that can go, and they've got to have landing spots. So I think I've heard probably 35 guys at this point in time that are all rumored to be gone by the 18th pick. So, we'll see what that ultimately looks like. Josue asked, what are my feelings on Ace as a prospect? Well, it's one of those things where I like a tall guy that can shoot. That's always a good thing. That's something the Wizards haven't had. I sort of maligned Tommy Shepard coming in and saying first thing he was going to try to do was add, athletic wings who could shoot, and he ultimately added none of them. They were either athletic and couldn't shoot, or couldn't, or could shoot and weren't athletic. So Ace is a little bit of both, which I think would be nice. But ultimately, he's just got to put some of those pieces together. I think it is a big swing because the upside is very real, but there's some reasons why it may not work out as well. Like, I don't think he's a surefire prospect necessarily. He's got to take better shots. He's got to use that athleticism a little more functionally on the court. He's got to apply it defensively. I think the defensive highlights, the upside was there, like the weak side shot blocking and things like that. When he wanted to put it to use is great, but just like any of these other guys in the top, 10-ish range, outside of maybe the top 2, there's some holes there. And it's just how confident are you that they'll fill in those holes ultimately for me. If he's there at 6 and they take him, I've got literally no problem with that whatsoever. I'd be excited about it. I like a player like Trey Johnson slightly better personally. If they're both on the board, that's the direction I would go. If Trey's off the board, I would take Ace. I would take Ace over VJ Edgecombe. Ace versus Jeremiah Fears debate is a little where I've got some back and forth, and maybe it depends on the day here a little bit. I've been pretty high on Fears throughout the last couple of months of the process. Seeing him in person was really big for me. When he played, he didn't look small on the court, compared to everybody else, but it was a college court. but just the speed, the ball handling, the way he moved on the court, the way he just kind of diced in and out of the paint. Like I thought that was important, and I can see the way that opens up the floor for the rest of the Wizards. So that would be great longer term to have something like that. But just putting Ace out there and letting him get some easier shots for a change would be great. I think as good as Dylan Harper was, he didn't really create a ton of great looks for Ace, and maybe some of that is Ace too. I do really like a big guy that can just like hit open shots and doesn't need a ton of dribbles to do it. I think that's a nice function on this roster. Like ultimately, I would have liked it if he was a better passer and creator, but realistically, if they gave him the ball on that team, he knew it was going to shoot, and hopefully you see enough there with high school tape to think that he can shoot and create for some other guys if the situation necessitates it. And that's been the nice thing about all the guys this front office has taken so far. They have the ability to create and play make and kind of move the ball around. The ball won't stop with anybody. So I think as long as you're confident Ace isn't that kind of player, that would be totally fine. Again, like somebody that could score 35 points on 10 total dribbles. Like I love stuff like that. He can be your Klay Thompson longer term great. Like to me, that's probably more of the type of player you're ultimately getting if he does turn it around on the defensive end and really lock in. That would be awesome to see. I don't see the Paul George, Tracy McGrady, Kevin Durant type player personally, but I would love to be wrong, especially if he's in a Wizards uniform ultimately. So, we'll see what those things look like here at the end of the day. All right. I'm hopefully going to have some other people popping in on this broadcast as we go. I think Kevin is trying to navigate multiple streams at the same time here and work those things out. We do have a couple other members of the Draft Twitter and Wizards Twitter content creator communities popping on here at different points, of the show. So you'll hear some other perspectives and some other voices. SH says, by the way, how effed up is it that Dallas ended up with the first pick? Same with San Antonio, the second pick. Need to change the lottery. Amen. Yeah, I think that's tough for bad teams. Like, how do you expect them to get better? If you can't really build through the draft, like you got to just bank on being lucky. And unfortunately for the Wizards, like they get the second pick last year in a year that was ultimately a down draft, whereas this year, hopefully it's a slightly better draft, especially at the top, and they're not quite as lucky here. Like the Koulibaly year being a few pick. I like Koulibaly as a pick, but being 3, 4, 5 in that draft and having all those options available to yourself would have been even better. So yeah, one of these years they're just due. I think next year's draft is going to be even stronger at the top. So ultimately, if they can just parlay that into some luck next year, that'd go a long way for them as well. In news that's shocking to no one here and not really news, Cooper Flagg goes number 1. The Dallas, I think that's one of the most foregone conclusion picks, maybe other than the Wembanyama that I can remember. There's usually at least like some sort of fight for who could end up the number 1 pick ultimately, but just not really the case with this particular situation here. So we'll see what Flagg ultimately does for Dallas. Going to be an interesting setup between he and Kyrie and Anthony Davis, although that defensive front court is pretty interesting. It just feels like the ultimate like bailout for Nico Harrison and that whole front office after doing what they did with Luka, who by all accounts is now shredded and going to be amazing this season, which we'll ultimately see how it goes. All right, we're trying to get Kevin in here and troubleshoot through this. But looks like there's some connection issues. Yeah, Jean-Paul mentioned Kyrie will not play until March. They could have used a really good offensive-minded guard. I don't know, like a Jordan Poole perhaps, in exchange for some kind of draft compensation. I would have taken the first pick for it. I don't know if they'd been willing to do that necessarily, but maybe there's something that could have been worked out there. Guess we'll never know. Jean-Paul also said, as a Frenchman, I want more Frenchmen on the team. Yeah, I mean, that doesn't seem to scare them, is loading up this team with French speakers. Maybe we can speak different languages throughout. So we'll see. Um, all righty. Guess we'll just we'll keep this one rolling. Um, yeah, I mean, I think this is going to be interesting now. Like we haven't seen a whole lot of movement leading right up to this, but by all accounts, I would imagine that the San Antonio Spurs are going to keep this pick. I think if that's what I would do if it were me, and build around a young core of Dylan Harper and Steph Castle at just let one sort of be the guy that breaks down the defense offensively, like Castle be the guy that puts clamps on people as a secondary creator, hits some spot up shots. I think that's just like a huge backcourt that makes a ton of sense. And then obviously, cleans up a lot for everybody here longer term. So, gonna be interesting to see how that kind of plays itself out over the course of the next couple of years. And they've got a big decision to make now, with De'Aaron Fox. And to me, I wouldn't let Fox's presence in any way deter them from what they're planning to do longer term here. Just he shouldn't be. I mean, like obviously they traded some assets to get him, but he shouldn't be a big enough factor in their long term plans or anything like that. All right, maybe just anybody watching along here, audio check. We sounded okay. At least I sounded okay. Me as the one singular person streaming at the moment. Am I coming through? Okay. If anybody could let me know in the comments, that would be sweet. Also, if you are watching this on YouTube and you don't mind hitting the like button for us, that's always appreciated. More people like this, the better, and becomes more discoverable, for everybody else here as we go. David, thank you for the mic check there. Thanks, Wes. Appreciate you. All right. Any questions? Any prospects you want to hear some chatter about as we get a little closer here? I'll just give you guys my thoughts on what the Wizards should do ultimately at 6. In the moment, it does obviously depend who's on the board there. I still imagine that somebody like a Trey Johnson's not available to them. So at the end of the day, this probably comes down to picking between some combination of Jeremiah Fears, Ace Bailey, Khan Knipple, maybe if he's there, Kaman Malawach. This is the one, that the most people have mentioned to me, I think in the last 2 days, is why wouldn't they just go get Malawach and build this massive, Twin Towers, combo between he and Alex Sarr. And I just keep saying, like, look at this year's playoffs. Like, obviously it was great in the regular season for Cleveland to have this sort of too big approach, but just at the end of the day, like the spacing bogs down. You have a drop coverage big, and as good as a Mobley or somebody like that is, I think ultimately when you look at the teams that made the finals, right, like it's having players like him at the 5 and being able to go 5 out and let them be switchable. And that's really sort of the best way to compete in the modern NBA to me, is the teams get a little smaller in those moments. You want more shot creation. You want more mobility. You want to be able to switch 1 through 5 as best you can. And I don't think you can do that if you've got Malawach and Sarr on the court together. So can you really afford to take the 6th pick on a guy that, as good as he may be at raising, your defensive floor and helping you in the regular season, is he going to be able to do that for you, in the playoffs? And I just don't see the two of them being able to play a ton of minutes together. You probably have to stagger them. So is a guy going with the 6th pick a good return on investment if he ultimately, can't trade or can't finish games for you when it ultimately matters? And obviously I'm looking way down the road here at, how you can be deep in the playoffs, and just maybe somebody to raise the floor for them in the short term makes a lot of sense. I would also just think it's a while for before bigs become good defensively. So, that there he is. There's my guy.
Hey, I had to switch to the bad computer.
Oh, okay. Not sure what's going on there. All right.
Yeah, whatever.
We'll make it work. I was just sort of giving my take on why I don't love the too big approach, and I wouldn't take Kaman Malawach at 6. I just don't think that that's modern team building necessarily. So if you are invested in Alex Sarr, that's just, the way I would try to build my team. Like, there's nothing wrong with him as a player. If I didn't already have presumably my big man of the future, that'd be a little different. But I think we saw Sarr this year was better when he was at the 5 as opposed to when he played the 4 next to, Jonas Valanciunas or any of the other bigs. So, long term, I wouldn't be spending the 6th pick on a guy who can't play with my just most recent number 2 pick. If you took a guy like that at 18 and you just want him to be able to like eat up some of those big man minutes, that's great. And I think that would make a lot of sense here.
Yeah, I agree. So I had Malawach 7th overall. That said, I hit that player type. I would not want to pick that high.
Right, exactly.
And so I have players who are rated lower, and I realize like there's a little like wouldn't call it like necessarily hypocriticalness, but it's a little silliness. By the way, Dylan Harper just became the 2nd pick.
Shocking.
So, but I agree. And I think for a lot of reasons, not that I necessarily think Malawach is going to be bad. It's just that player type, I think, is a little limited. His agility scores were a bit concerning. Also, in the numbers, for somebody as huge as he is to block as few shots, he only averaged 2.5 per 40. For somebody that large, you would expect that to be a lot closer, like over 4, over 5. It's like Walker Kessler blocked way more shots than that. And he's not nearly as big. So that's a very long way of saying I agree. And I wouldn't pick him that high. And I do also agree. I think Sarr is a 5. And the Wizards played him at 5 all season. And I don't see why he would be less of a 5 in the future than he was as a 19-year-old rookie.
Now, a big that can complement him and they can play a little more interchangeably together, I think makes sense. But when you have somebody like Malawach that's basically landlocked as a 5, I think that's when you're now pigeonholing Sarr a little bit more as your 4. And I think that's the other value he brings to your team is that he could do a little bit of both, and he's malleable and stuff like that. And most of the other guys they've taken, there's at least 2 positions you can see them playing functionally on a court, whereas Malawach doesn't really kind of fit that mold for me. So I don't know. I was told I was really stupid for not liking him. He's a no-brainer, but ultimately, he's one of those guys where like it's cool, but it's also huge, and there's usually health issues and foot breakdowns and all kinds of stuff. So if he's even slightly healthier than Mark Williams, yeah, sure, that's a valuable player, or Walker Kessler or whoever, but it's just the upside's just not quite as high. If he falls to 12 and they want to go back up to try to get him, cool. That doesn't bother me quite as much. But
yeah,
presumably
I'm
we're only
really
going to
okay
be
with them not picking Malawach at all.
Okay.
Or I think rim running centers you can get, and I would rather have the rim runner that's a little more like Daniel Gafford, to be honest, who's like a little more mobile, bouncier than a more plotting type. I would prefer, or Derek Lively, somebody who maybe you can do something other than playing drop coverage, which, teams have gotten a lot better at. You look at what Oklahoma City did defensively. You look at what Indiana started to do defensively, especially at times when, Miles Turner was off the floor. There's more room. And I think they've got the big man for that already. Alex Sarr, I think, is somebody who is a switchable big man who can get out and play some of that helter-skelter kind of crazy defense. But I don't think Malawach is that guy. So
yeah, same. Also, I just don't buy the shooting. I keep hearing but he shot in international competition. I can find no data to support that, but this is the same as Mark Williams and some of these other guys shot really well in workouts. And there was the famous one where Mark Williams came up and lit it up from 3, shooting for the Wizards, and got himself maybe higher up on the board for Tommy Shepard. Now, ultimately, I would have still rather had injury-prone Mark Williams to Johnny Davis from how it worked out. But at the time, I was like, please don't draft this guy because you think he's ever going to shoot a bunch of threes. And to date, I don't think he's made a single NBA 3, which is sort of what I assume is the case, at least in the short term for Malawach as well.
Yeah, there's no reason to think that Malawach is going to become even a semi-competent. I mean, I think if he becomes as good a 3-point shooter as, say, Valanciunas was, that would be a pleasant upset.
Yep.
I don't even see that. I mean, and with Valanciunas, he never really became a threat from out there, not in terms of volume. You just kind of let him shoot it, and teams were pretty content to let him shoot it. And he was pretty content to do that super exaggerated ball fake and then bring it down and do dribble handoff for the most part.
Which is still valuable. OBJ said, "Ace me, please." Yeah, I think that's probably the most popular selection amongst the Wizards Twitter base here. So sounds like recent reporting, he did a workout according to Kristen Peak with the Wizards in secret, which I always love a good secret workout. So we'll see. I saw someone else report that was his only workout. It's also not true. He worked out for a couple of other teams as well. But that's, fine. At least he got one in with the Wizards. I always like them meeting a guy, seeing him in person, those kinds of things I think are a little important before you're married for the next couple of years. So we'll see what that means. Ite says, what type of player works best with Sarr? Is it a Queen or is it a Colin Murray Boyles? To me, it's that kind of guy that can rebound and move a little bit defensively. I don't think Queen is the right player for him defensively, which is why I don't like that pick much personally. Murray Boyles, I think, is too limited offensively, so wouldn't be my guy. I think structurally, it's a Newell, it's a Fleming, it's one of these guys that can play some five, small ball five, or some four that you expect to shoot it longer term. Newell didn't show that a ton this year. Fleming did. Newell's probably a little bulkier than Fleming. Fleming's a little bouncier, but those kind of guys, and that's how I'd go, Kevin, like that kind of person.
In my final Yoda rankings, Newell came in 5th. So if they pick him there, Colin Murray Boyles, I've got him 6th. So either one of those guys, I think I would be pretty happy. And then at 18, if they could somehow, or 18 or somewhere in there, get Rasheer Fleming, I think that would be a lot of fun. That would be a long, I think that adds some good stuff to the to the team at that point. So.
Yeah, and there's still some upside with Fleming. Maybe there's a world where he's, playing some on the wing here for you too, which would be really even better if you get more positional versatility. All right, the 76ers pick is in. This is, I think this is well said. Farzi said, looks like ESPN banned Shams. Yeah, I was refreshing there for a minute ago. And DJ said this Philly pick determines a lot. Them taking VJ Edgecombe, I'm assuming they tried to make some deals. Maybe something happens later here. But ultimately, they just picked a guy that could come in and defend. I think they obviously like Tyrese Maxey and Jared McCain. Neither of them are particularly prolific defenders. So VJ can be your guy to just lock people up on the perimeter. Maybe he can play a little 3 in some situations against certain teams. But you just saw how valuable that archetype guy is, in the playoffs with Caruso and, some of these dudes locking people up on the perimeter, even a Lou Dort. So if he's a supercharged one of those guys and eventually does more offensively, great. But I think the floor is just really good perimeter defender, good athlete. I'm not as high on him as consensus. So I'm happy to see Philly take him at 3, and I'm happy to leave all the other options available to the Wizards at 6, if possible. Yeah,
I like Edgecombe. And I like the rebounding, the assists, a lot of steals. So all that's good. He looks like he should be a good pro. And I don't think this pick or breaks Philly. What they need is Embiid to get healthy and stay healthy. And if that happens, they have a chance to be good. And they need Embiid and they need Paul George. I think with the age and health of those guys, they really have like a 1-year window, I think. Yeah. And so I don't think Edgecombe makes that big a difference for them. I wouldn't be shocked if they end up trading him. So, we'll see. All right, I'm going to pop over to the other stream, and I will be back in just a minute.
Sounds good. Yeah, Kevin's over on the playback stream for Bullets Forever. If anybody wants to watch over on playback, you're welcome to do that. Obviously, you're welcome to stay here with us too, which I'd love to have you here selfishly. So keep us rolling. Yeah, I think this is going to be pretty interesting to see what New Orleans. I still want to call them the New Orleans Hornets sometimes. What the Charlotte Hornets are up to. This is just what some of you guys said. Yeah, City of Oak said it too. Your draft officially starts with Philly. I think this is another equally big pick for us and Washington. I'd love to see the Hornets try to get way too cute or way too creative and reach for somebody, that ultimately doesn't make a ton of sense. But I don't know if we can get that lucky. If all these teams just do kind of wild stuff, that's really the question. Presumably, Charlotte really, really liked Edgecombe throughout. So maybe if you're Philly, you take Edgecombe and you force Charlotte to trade you something else and give you another asset. Maybe, I don't know. Just looking at the guys who were left, Malawach as a rim runner in the what they expected Mark Williams to be kind of category. Maybe that ultimately would make some sense for them. Again, for me at 4, that's a little too rich for my blood here. Just looking at, consensus mock draft to who the next couple guys are. You've got Con Knipple, again, Ace Bailey, Jeremiah Fears, Trey Johnson, come on, Malawach, Noah Essengate, Carter Bryant, kind of rounding out your consensus top 10 there. So, we'll see. Maybe, again, they get kind of cute. Fears is actually someone that could make some sense for them as a penetrating guard that could play next to LaMelo. LaMelo's big enough to guard some twos for them, provides enough floor spacing and perimeter shooting. That would be a worthwhile name for them to consider potentially. So for the Wizards fans that don't like Fears that much, maybe that would help you guys out here a little bit. But that's, what Philly does is going to be really, I think, super impactful to what the Wizards do, because I could see them, being interested in the same kind of player here ultimately that the Wizards are, and they need an equally big swing. I mean, I guess Utah does too, but I don't know. Just doesn't strike me as the type of team that does the same kind of thing the Wizards do. Got Danny Ainge over there, with a track record of taking some interesting guys, and somebody like a Jaylen Brown that didn't really have the on-court success was an interesting pick, at the time. So maybe he could go for somebody similar. That could be like a Carter Bryant or something like that. Maybe 4 is a little too, or 5 is a little too rich for Utah. But really, really interested to see, what this Philly pick does. Or sorry, what this Philly pick. Geez, it's early, and I'm still already all over the place. I think Charlotte is going to be an interesting one here too. I just don't really know what the plan is in Philly. You got Embiid, who's just only going to get less healthy. You got Paul George, who looked like a shell of himself. And then just the 2 guards that are kind of small, and do they fit together long term? That's, I don't know. We'll see what that means for them overall here. DJ says, I think Charlotte might go Con or reach for Malawach. Yeah, it'd be interesting. Look, they need shooting, right? Like that would actually probably help LaMelo to have some shooting around he and Brandon Miller. Miller's one sort of Achilles heel so far this year is I don't think he got downhill particularly well. He actually might be a better comp for Ace Bailey than some of these other names they've mentioned. Although I think he's a little better, passer and driver, maybe not quite as athletic. I don't know. We'll see. But he didn't really get to the rim all that much this year. So maybe somebody like Khan to space the floor for them would be interesting. And again, you've got LaMelo's got some size on the perimeter, so they could be a little more switchable here. But I don't know. Again, if there's any particular guys you want us to talk about, just drop them in the chat here, and we'll see how it goes. Dasan asks, how's Ace defensively? Yeah, I didn't love it personally. I thought there were just some like really bad lapses and things like that over the course of the year. But again, the highs were pretty high. So I think you've just ultimately, if you take him, you're banking on, hey, we can coach defense, and that's more of a know-how thing than it is an energy and effort thing. So if you think he's got the willingness, supposedly the physical tools, are there. Again, I don't think he put his functional athleticism to use as much this year as you would hope for a guy that looks pretty eye-popping when he wants to. But he did have some big-time weak side blocks, some chase down blocks, some things like that. So, that's the hope, is that's the guy you see more of here over the course of his career. Byronman 12 says Khan can play some point guard. I don't see that a ton personally. I don't know. Kevin, I know you didn't get to watch a ton of them this year, but some question about whether Con Knipple can play some point guard. I don't think you want that from him. I think he's a perfectly good secondary, even better as a tertiary ball mover, but I don't think you want him initiating offense in the truest, sense of things here. But again, if he did it situationally, or he brought the ball up from time to time, or he's got decent size, so if he got some rebounds and advances the ball, like if that's what we're calling, point guard, I think that's okay. But you don't want him like with ball pressure against somebody's elite defensive, point of attack defender, trying to create for other people.
Yeah, I agree. I didn't see anything in the numbers to make me think that he was a point guard. He looks like a classic wing. 2 guard, 3 guard, or 2 or 3 in your standard 1 through 5 setup. I don't see him as a 1. That doesn't mean that he can't bring the ball up sometimes.
Knippel, the 4th pick in the NBA draft, so we don't even have to worry about that, Washington. And that was probably the guy that was the least popular pick amongst Wizards fans overall. So now we don't even have to think about it. For them, I would say go watch what he did in the ACC tournament where Cooper Flagg was out. He went absolutely supernova for a couple games there, and there's some more upside there. So, we'll see how that looks. But yeah, Knippel off the board, which means at least somebody that Wizards fans presumably will be available for them here at 6. So a lot of questions about Ace in the chat. Moneyman Steven says, would Ace be our number 1 if we draft him? No. I mean, I don't think we have a legit number 1 on the team. Maybe he turns into that ultimately. Most number 1 offensive options create off the dribble, play make a little bit more, and can do some of that heliocentric stuff you see on some of these other teams. Like, he's not an SGA. I think he's a Brandon Miller on the wing play finisher type, not an offense generator type. Graybeard, yep, board falling as expected so far. Agreed. City Vokes, Fears and Johnson slot in his guards. Where does Bailey fit into the league? To me, he's a big 2 guard right now. Ultimately, you want him to play some 2 or some 3 to start, and sort of that's the maybe only thing I'd compare to Kevin Durant. Is the progression of starting as a 2 and moving down the lineup as he got physically stronger. At 6'7", though, he's probably not playing a ton of 4 in the NBA, but maybe he's playing some situational small ball 4. Just think about him like in a playoff game having to guard like Pascal Siakam. I don't see that anytime in the immediate future here. But again, strength and bulking up goes a long way here. So I wouldn't rule it out. I just don't see that in the short term.
By the way, in our mock draft that we did with Erson, the number 4 pick was Knippel.
That's right. Yeah, take that, everybody. Yeah, I mean that's just it's a smart, practical move for them, right? Like, you've got some potential stars on that team. LaMelo is a really good player, multi-time All-Star level guy, and I think Brandon Miller can be that. So putting really good ancillary pieces around them, I think, is just smart to do. They don't have to swing as big as we need to swing at this point. All right, Kevin, gun to your head. Who do the Wizards end up drafting here at 6?
My guess is it'll be Fears or Ace Bailey. That'd be my guess.
I think that's the smart money here at this point in time.
So of those 2, absolutely yes. Well, it'll be interesting to see who Utah picks, because Utah obviously can take one of them.
Yeah.
So that'll be interesting.
Yeah, honestly, having Ace learn from a guy like Lauri Markkanen wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. Obviously, Markkanen's bigger, but could you eventually, have them have a similar shot profile and things like that? Maybe that's worth a shot. And Bailey maybe fits in a little bit more of what Ainge has tried to do in past years, was swing for guys that had big high school reputations and maybe weren't quite as good in college as, everybody initially anticipated. And so he could see that as a buy low, opportunity and just take him here at 5. Honestly, I think if that's what I would probably do if I were Danny Ainge. So I know Wizards fans won't want to see him go off the board at 5. That's kind of a punch if that's the guy everybody likes, and then he goes 1 right before us. But that would be most fitting for Wizards fandom there at this point, I think.
It would be in keeping with them getting the worst possible pick they could get in the first round. So, that would be perfect. By the way, though, that is all 4 of the top 4 in Yoda are all off the board now.
Wow.
So,
all right. Like that. Who's 5 on the board? Oh. Who's 5 on your board, Kev?
5 is Asa Newell, followed by Colin Murray Boyles and Kamen Malawach after that. So
okay. We're in that range of the draft here.
All right, like I say, this group, I've got a group now from, let's see, 5, 6. Really, it's like I've got 7 guys who are kind of in the about the same range. So
you think the Jazz are just really bummed right now that the really good white player went right before them and they weren't able to get him? It just feels like he would fit in with that group overall there. But what can you do?
I don't know. I suspect they don't care, but maybe they do.
The fans. I meant more the fans than the front office.
Oh, the fans. Yeah, maybe. I feel like a lot of fan bases really like the white guys. So
yeah, it's the Celtics. Another one. They're just going to keep taking white shooters for forever. That's fine.
Yeah.
All right, we're coming up to do Utah here. We'll see what they ultimately go with. If you were Utah, Kevin, who would you take?
If I was Utah, let me think. They're in a situation where they really need help just about everywhere. I'd probably go Ace Bailey. So if it was really me making the pick, I would go ahead and pick Newell because he's the next guy on my list, and I think he's going to be a good player. I think guessing what I think Utah is likely to do, I think they pick Bailey. They could use a guard, but they have small guards, and I think Fears would be the next guy on the consensus list. So that would be my guess.
Yeah, I think
All right,
maybe
hold on. I got to be right back. I'll be right back. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. Isaiah Collier showed maybe just enough for them this year that they might find he and Jeremiah Fears redundant. I think that's part of the question for them is just how they make all those sort of pieces fit together. They've had a couple guys that are more scoring guards like Keontae George, and they've got Jordan Clarkson there, obviously, although he's not going to be probably the long-term, option for them. So it's going to be interesting. Let's see. Sean Paul asked, what are the Nets doing with 5 picks? Sure, they would trade up. Yeah, they could. That's certainly an interesting option for them overall here. Yeah, I had a feeling that was going to be how that worked out, unfortunately. But Bailey just makes too much sense for them, unless there's some secret trade in the works where this is like, the draft night with Belisle and the Wizards throw a couple second-round picks in there to jump up and swap. This is really the question here. Yeah, City of Oak says, so it's Fears or Johnson to the Wizards. I like both. I've been saying that the whole time, so I'm kind of happy with this outcome. Regardless, all 3 of those options would have been fine with me. I really, really enjoy Trey Johnson, and that's the guy I would give, the slight preference to here personally. But if they choose to go another way, I'm ultimately not mad at it. I think Johnson gives you a little bit more size and a little bit more guaranteed shooting. I'm not worried about Fears as a shooter longer term here, but with Johnson, it's just one guy they will have drafted that you just can bring in day one, and you don't have to worry about basically, improving his shot, which would be super nice. But that again, that's the thing I've harped on a lot here. They ultimately don't seem all that worried about teaching guys how to shoot. So I will see. I think if it were me, in order of guys I would take at this pick, I do still like a playmaking guard. So I'd go Trey Johnson and Jeremiah Fears. I like Kasparas Giacosonis next of the guards on that list. I know he's not a particularly popular name, again, amongst the Wizards fan base from what I've gathered here. But, if these guys weren't on the board, he would be my next available guard for sure. But I think these are the 2 they should pick between ultimately. But I think if it's Malawacha, that's probably the one reasonably on the table guy they could take that I would be disappointed by. So hopefully it's not that. Sorry for any of the Malawatch fans or Malawatch family watching this, maybe, who knows. But yeah, we'll see. Either way, you've still got 2 good options. And I think where we were at, leading up into this point, Kevin, I think when we saw 6, it was pretty doomsday for a lot of us here, but just realistically having a chance at 2 good guards here that could give you something and have some potential upside. I think that's it could have been a lot worse for us, I guess, is where I'm at. No, you are muted, sir. If you're trying to talk.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was talking to the other thread.
Oh,
while
no,
you
do
were
that.
talking here.
No worries. That's fine.
I'll leave both open right now. So
There you
I
go.
was just sort of recapping. Wizards, obviously, Fears is on the table for them. Ace Bailey went 5th. So Fears, I've also got, Fears would be a good pick. Potentially Asa Newell, Colin Murray Boyles, Noah Essengay, all of them, Trey Johnson, all would be pretty solid picks at this point.
Yeah, agreed. I'm not scrolling much on Twitter right now. I'd love to hear the reaction of the collective fan base here, but I gotta assume it's pretty dour at the moment, just given how much Ace Baileying there was going on here. That's just, we called it. It's the most Wizards possible thing that could happen. Just having the guy next up for them go immediately after that.
Patrick Orr asks, is there any shot that there's a trade in the works with the Jazz? I would say there's, of course, a shot that there's a trade, in part because Wizards have done this before. They did this a couple drafts ago when they traded up a spot to get Bilal Coulibaly. So that's entirely possible. And I think for the Jazz, with what they need, this seems like a pretty logical move in that spot. So.
Yeah, we'll see. Fitz Cantrell just asked the same thing. Is a trade in the works for Ace? Yeah, I can't rule it out, right? Like, just for the reasons that Kevin just mentioned there. I would kind of doubt it, just because I do think Ace makes sense for their team. Whereas, like, I didn't think Coulibaly made as much sense, and it was pretty, well reported that they liked Jarris Walker. Just would like to remind you, this live stream during that Coulibaly draft was the first place anybody publicly reported that Coulibaly was going to be the pick for the Wizards. Matt Babcock came on here and said he was their guy, and that was not out in the ether before this. So, we did break that particular story live on the pod here. So we'll see, what that ends up looking like for them. All right. Just need this.
I see Robert Chang in the comments here says Malawach. That would honestly be, I think, one of the guys that would surprise me a bit. He just does not seem like a Will Dawkins kind of pick.
It'd be one of the few guys that would disappoint me personally to take him at 6, honestly. And that's not shade on him as a player, because I do think he'll be a valuable, productive NBA player. It just boxes you in a little bit more than I like to see them go. And that's been sort of the nice, thing about this front office, is that presumably the guys they've drafted, you can't put them in sort of a neat box necessarily. Now, maybe they ultimately end up a little bit more limited, but at least the theoretical upside of all those guys gives you some more options. So, we'll see.
Yeah. So I think it's kind of rude, to be honest, that ESPN's at a commercial as the Wizards are on the clock.
Our next great superstar gets drafted during a Fantastic Four commercial. He could be our superhero combined with the other rookies and make a Fantastic Five, maybe. I don't know.
They're saying the pick is in. Yeah, Robert Chang, I do know where he scores in Yoda. I also wrote in that article that I personally would not want to pick him this high. It's really a player type issue. We talked about him a little bit earlier, but it is a player type issue, talking about Malawach. And I think that the Wizards want more scheme versatility than a guy who has to play drop coverage as a big, and also did not block many shots as somebody as big as he is. So I think a rim running shot blocker, you can get those in various spots in the draft. I don't think you need to use the 6th pick overall to get somebody like that.
Yeah.
And I don't think that he really does enough to distinguish himself. And also he's agility tested very poorly at the combine. So I would just, for all those reasons, even though he was productive, even though he shot 75% on 2s, I would not pick him here. I would pick other guys. And I've got, 2 or 3 guys rated ahead of him and a few other guys that are kind of like in that same score. And so I'd be perfectly fine picking somebody else, even people who are rated a little like behind him. They're ranked behind him. But I think I would prefer that player type. I think that player type's got better odds. That's one of the things I'm looking at as I always tinker with Yoda. That's one of the things I'm looking at is like, is there a way that I can tease out or do some things to get at player types and stuff that's a little bit better. So, all right, who's the pick?
Yeah, I'd rather just have like a Ryan Kalkbrenner at 30 than I would Malawach at 6, just for a drop coverage big that at least I know can shoot it a little bit because I've seen him do it. But again, I hope it's Trey Johnson. That would be the move here. If it's
That is the pick. Trey Johnson is the pick.
Cool. I've got it up behind me on the TV, as you can maybe see in the background there, and I'm watching it on an iPad, which is 10 seconds behind that. So that's great. We'll take this, man. Let's rock. Could this be our next big, high volume, high scoring guard that hopefully does so a little bit more efficiently? There's a lot to like about Trey Johnson. This is a dude that took a really dysfunctional Texas team. Their better players were holdovers, from a previous coach that got dismissed, that a lot of them decided to stick around with Rodney Terry. They brought in Trey Johnson anyway, because Terry had been their top recruiter for him, and they had a relationship. But he joined a not very good Texas team, got them to the tournament, was really good in that tournament game, didn't let them, kind of like fall out of that game against a high power Xavier offense. He shot a ton of threes and made a ton of threes on a team where he was literally the only spacing. So I've seen concerns about him getting to the rim and things like that, but put him on an NBA court, even the Wizards with not much spacing, it's still more room to operate than a college court with a packed lane and things like that. So I'm not worried about that ultimately. I have heard from multiple people just in the draft community here that have talked to people around him and things like that don't have anything to gain by saying this, that he is like a crazy, crazy hard worker. And I think that fits the Dawkins MO of just like head down, just going to do my thing. He's got a good personality. I got to do the media with them at the NCAA tournament after. Like he just seemed like a nice kid. And I think that's pretty cool. He's also rocking the Are They's, like, are they shorts? Are they pants? And I always respect somebody willing to make a bold fashion choice on draft night. So I love this. I could not be happier with this. This is the guy I had 3 on my board. So getting him at 6, I feel great about.
Yeah. So I like Johnson. Obviously terrific shooter. Concerns, when I say terrific shooter, we're talking almost 40% on threes, 87% from the free throw line. That's all good. Concerns, the low 2-point percentage, 44.9%. And Yoda also didn't care for the lack of non-scoring production, meaning not many rebounds, not many assists, not many steals or blocks. So he's a good shooter, and that translates. And his good size and his athleticism is pretty decent too. So, I think it's a solid pick at 6, and he should be able to fit right into that lineup, especially since they're down Jordan Poole now.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, I think, could he come in and be a Jordan Poole replacement in year 1? I mean, that in like a good way, of just a guy that can soak up some of that creation and production. He's not like, prime John Stockton or Isaiah Thomas or one of those guys, but I think he is a good passer, like a legitimately good mover of the ball. He kicked out, created, for other people here throughout the course of the year. They had nobody that could knock down perimeter shots. All their guys that shot a decent percentage took like 1 a game, so they weren't really a threat to do a whole lot there. So I think, I'm not as worried about him as a passer or a playmaker or initiator or things like that. And yeah, he doesn't rebound a ton, but I'm not too worried about that overall. I think he makes a pretty good backcourt next to Bub Carrington, where they can be a little more interchangeable. Who's on ball, who's off ball. That'll be good. I think he's probably slightly better as a 2, where I think Bub this year was better as a 1. So play them together next year in the backcourt from day 1 and just let them rock and play through those mistakes. Just a couple comments here. Farzi said Fears was a massive smokescreen, I guess. I don't think that's true. Like they clearly did their due diligence on Fears, and that was probably with the expectation that somebody like Johnson wasn't available to them. Like, so if maybe you had Johnson higher, but you thought he was going to go 3 through 5, then yeah, do your due diligence on Fears. But yeah, there's obviously smoke screens out there with the reporting of, they'd move up and take Fears at 2. Like, that was never a realistic option anyway. So I wouldn't have put much stock into that at the time. Robert Chang, happy with the pick. Didn't think we had a chance to get him. I agree. Andrew Addison, I don't think we have a player in the rotation shorter than 6'5". Should get some fun lineups. Again, I think that makes a lot of sense for them. And hopefully, again, these guys all have theoretical upside as shooters, but ultimately, if a few of them work out, you become a pretty dangerous team to guard. Ite says he's a basketball fanatic, eats, drinks, and lives basketball. Yeah, again, I have heard that from people in that circle that believe that as well. So that's pretty awesome. Yeah, this is cool. I'm hyped, man. Like I feel bad for the people that were so locked in on Ace Bailey to get the rug pulled out from under him at the last minute here. But hopefully this is a good consolation prize for you. Fitz asked, what's the pros and cons of Ace versus Trey? Well, I mean, I think Ace's best value is as a big wing shooter right now, but the percentages aren't that good. Whereas Trey's a little smaller, but he is a better shooter. He's got a better handle. I talked about this a lot on the pod here recently, but I think that's the hardest thing for a player to get markedly better at is as a ball handler. And I didn't really see that, much there with Ace this year. Maybe he's got a better handle than he was able to show, but Ace, I think, is a better handler of the ball. He's not as explosive as an athlete. He's a little smaller, but I do think he'll make more for people. So I think he's more of a guard and Ace is more of a wing. And I think the typical pros and cons that come with both of those positions, you can weigh the two of them here. But this makes sense to me, at least.
I have them basically right together with Trey Johnson being slightly ahead. So I have Trey Johnson 11 and Ace Bailey 12 and the Yoda big board or little board or whatever the size board. Pretty comparable. Bailey a little on the low side on 2-point percentage for a wing, especially for somebody who's supposed to be a long and athletic wing. Lower 3-point percentage, lower free throw percentage, rebounded better, but fewer assists and, blocked a few more shots, which makes sense because he's bigger. Also a few more turnovers and a few more fouls. So I think overall, they're pretty comparable in terms of overall impact. It is interesting that Bailey was Jeremiah Fears, by the way, goes 7th. That Bailey was on a bad team, and that he's supposed to be a really good player. He's supposed to be elevating that, and he's also on a bad team despite being also with a top 2 pick, number 2 overall pick on that team. So
I think there were definitely NBA front offices that couldn't rule that out, right? And the same question probably should have been asked of Dylan Harper as well. But when you looked at their on-off numbers, it was more, favorable to Harper and his contributions to the team.
Yeah.
All right, let's bring in another a voice here, and let's just get their perspective on it. The man himself, Greg Finberg. Greg, how are we feeling after the Trey Johnson pick?
I'm going to duck over to the playback, so I'll catch you guys.
Feeling great. Trying to get the camera centered. I mean, Johnson, I know you like Trey Johnson. I'm a big fan of Trey Johnson. We talked at length about him. Yep. He's a number 3 guy on my board. Someone that can put the ball in the bucket. Led the SEC in scoring as a freshman. Nearly 40% from 3 on a high volume. Really good movement shooter as well, which is really nice in order to play off ball. Someone who led his team to the tournament. Like, he has all the traits. And from what I heard, and I'm not an insider, but from all the stuff I've read, he killed it in his pre-draft workouts. I was surprised Utah passed on him because I heard he had a really good workout in Utah. But clearly Utah takes Bailey. I think that's shocking. I mean, if you asked me 10 minutes ago, I would have said Ace Bailey's a wizard. I guess not. Utah takes a flyer on him, but I think Trey Johnson is the better player than Ace Bailey. Maybe not as high of an upside as him, but someone that can score the ball. The Wizards have been dead last in offensive rating and efficiency each of the last 2 seasons. They need someone that can put the ball in the hoop, and Johnson's just that. So I'm pretty thrilled with it. I could have lived with Bailey. I would have understood it, but I wouldn't have been able to understand Fears over Johnson. I'm glad that the Wizards front office is smart and they know what they're doing. So I'm pretty happy. Pretty home run pick in my book.
Yeah, same here. I think you nailed it. I mentioned this on a pod after seeing him at the time. If anybody wants to scroll back through, but seeing Johnson in person at Dayton, in like a good way. I don't want this to come off the wrong way, but like, he was the guy who had it going late for them and the only one actually like generating offense. So when a few other guys took, like Trayvon Marks took an absolutely terrible shot, like Johnson was like, "What are you doing?" Like, I'm I'm the dude here, and to be able to be that guy on the team as a freshman and be successful and productive doing it, I think says a lot about where he's at overall. Greg, how do you feel about his ability to like run an offense? Do you see him being able to play as an on-ball creator essentially for people.
Yeah, you were someone that got to watch him up close and personal, so you probably have a better perception than me, who's only watched highlights. I feel like the role he was forced into at Texas is pretty different than maybe what he'll be forced to do in the NBA. I mean, he had to do a lot for that offense to go, and he had to do a lot to get them through the SEC into the tournament. And that's one of the reasons I thought the Wizards should pick him, because I don't think he's going to be this guy that completely commands an offense like he did at Texas. But, if you ask him to do a little bit less than that, just kind of be a guy that can space the floor, can play on ball at times, but I think could complement a guy like Bub Carrington pretty well. I would be confident and comfortable if you had Trey bring the ball up a couple times a game. I don't know if he's necessarily projecting as a lead guard, but somebody that can shoot the way that he can shoot on the move, set shots, that can kind of fit in a lot of places. It's a similar reason why, Charlotte had to take a nibble. He's so good in so many different areas. And I think, Trey's upside is very high, but I think his floor is also very high. I think he's just going to be a really solid player, and it depends on the role. So I don't know about lead guard role for Johnson. I'm curious what you think, but I certainly think he can be a combo guard. If you need him to play on ball, I wouldn't be too afraid of those minutes, if I'm being real.
I think he can. I think, not the truest sense of the word like point guard in the way we think of old school point guard, but can he be a bigger, Dame Lillard type guy where he's a scoring threat first and then can generate some offense second? I heard a lot of like, oh, he's like a Buddy Hield type, and it's from people whose opinion I respect, but I just think there's a lot more creation there to do that. Like, we don't see Buddy Hield much as an on-ball guy, and he just shoots the shit out of it, which is great too. But I think that's the floor for Johnson as a player, is at least he comes in and is just going to drill shots for you. And I think that's great. Like Josue said, his highest ceiling is Ray Allen, Desmond Bane. Oof. Those are two very different players, especially Josue. I know you're a little younger, so you maybe don't remember like prime Ray Allen, but he was like crossing dudes up and dunking on them. Like that's a little bit of a different player than I think what we get from Desmond Bane. I think there's more there offensively, and I think that's what you're hoping on if you take him at 3. If you get him at 6, you can live a little bit more with maybe that kind of stuff, doesn't fully come around. Greg, where are you with the defense overall? Do you think he can at least be a plus defender long-term?
I'll say this, like I like in his pre-draft interviews that they were like, what's your biggest weakness? And he said, my defense. He's like, that's fine. I know at least where I can improve. He said, you can always improve on defense. It's not like anything like height or measurables that you can't teach. He has decent size for a guard. I'm pretty comfortable with playing him if he wants to be a 2. I think he can defend multiple positions. I don't think it's a guy like Fears that you throw the ball in if you have a mismatch. Like, I don't necessarily see teams looking for it in that case. But in terms of defense, like, he wasn't great on that end. I think he's better than some people have been saying than he is. He's not a liability by any means. And like, I'm fine. He can shoot. He has the size. He can really get you a bucket, create for himself, which is something the Wizards lack. And this is clearly a group that wants to play good team defense. I think anybody in that system can buy into it. I mean, Steph Curry was a quote bad defender for most of his career. He got stronger. He kind of bought in on that end. They won the championship. He was good on that end. So, I think anybody can be a good defender. It's a lot about effort and IQ as much as it is about defensive skill, in my opinion. So I think it's a little overblown. It's definitely warranted, and Trey knows that as well. But I like the fact that he's self-aware. I like the fact that he knows, yeah, I'm not good at it, but I'm clearly someone that wants to improve on it. And that's kind of what I like.
Yeah, I think that just speaks to an approach, too, of treating your interviews that way and really answering those honestly. And there were certain other people, that this fan base liked who I don't think would have answered that question maybe quite the same way based on what we're hearing about their interviews. So it's just sort of what you like. I think he showed on the court, a willingness to attack people. Bullets Nation asked, is it true that he's a ball hog? I don't know. He averaged 3 assists per game on a team with not a lot of other, featured scorers around him and not a lot of guys that were capable of knocking down shots at a high level. So I didn't think that. But like I said, he was willing to take over, a game when they needed someone to step up and do that. And that's pretty rare for a freshman in arguably the greatest conference, that college basketball's ever seen, which that applied to Fears here as well. So, I feel pretty good about it.
Yeah, likewise. And if I can just add like the ball hog stuff, like I like to see the system that they play in. I like to see how much they're like being asked to do, because in college, these guys are being asked to do a lot more than they'll be asked to do with NBA players in an NBA system. And Trey was asked to do quite a bit on offense. So I think those are a little bit overblown. He had to do a lot. He did good, led the SEC in scoring, decent percentages, led him to the tournament, winning basketball. So, you know, I really like the pick. I think it's a really good pick.
Yeah, couldn't agree more with you here too. Interesting next pick here. Yegor Demon goes 8 to Brooklyn. I think I tried telling some people this guy was going to be a top 10 pick for the teams that he shot well in warm-ups for. So I'm not too surprised. And he's a little bit of a flyer, especially at 8. But if you have 5 first-round picks, you
might as well take a chance.
Yeah, take the biggest swing you can. And if you believe he shoots it, I think you just got yourself a pretty special player here. But that's really the if, I think, for him overall.
Yeah, definitely the shooting. I mean, I saw some people even having him, today in the outside the lottery, which I thought was pretty crazy. I could have seen maybe a top 10 fall, but I think a team that knows that they can use him as a ball handler and kind of put the ball in his hands makes sense. That's why the Wizards didn't make much sense to him. I thought, especially before they traded Poole and even after, like they have guys that they want the ball in their hands, and I don't know necessarily they want Demon to be that guy, but Brooklyn certainly has the opening. So I think that could be a good spot for him.
Yeah, again, if you're Washington, like if you thought he could shoot, he made some sense for you. And if you didn't, it becomes a little tougher. Just at some point, they're going to have to end up with some space. And if they're still in on, Keyshawn as a playmaker or Bilal as a playmaker here as well, that'd be great. I can't say this too strongly here because I don't want to offend anybody here, but like I'm not as sold on Bub as like a long-term really good starter on a playoff team. I think there's definitely potential for that. I just don't know that it's like I've seen enough yet to like set it in stone here longer term. So I think anybody that's worried, is he redundant at all with Trey? Again, I think this is an accumulation of assets. They can play together in the short term. And then you worry about long term. Is the fit, ideal, or is it conducive for them to play like the best brand of winning basketball you can build and that sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean, certainly you mentioned talent accumulation. That's kind of the name of the game. Like just get talent when you can get it. I think Trey was the most talented player on the board. Even if they took Fears again, if they thought he was the most talented on the board, I wouldn't have liked the pick as much as Trey Johnson. But I understand that they're looking for talent. And again, they're not doing plug and play like a team like OKC can do. Like they have talent needs everywhere. They are not a good basketball roster, not a good basketball team, and they're drafting good basketball players. And I think Trey and Bub is an interesting, intriguing front court. I certainly think playing behind a guy like CJ McCollum, if you're Trey Johnson, could be a pretty intriguing vet to play behind for as long as he's in DC. But certainly I'm intrigued by the pick. I think he's a great shooter, and I think he's going to thrive in DC. Going to get minutes too, which is big.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, again, I wasn't as immediately enamored with the trade yesterday, just because I thought they should have been able to get something for Poole. But this is a thing that if you thought you were going to take somebody like Trey Johnson, that's maybe the person he was redundant with in the short term. So hopefully you freed him up a little bit there. Josue mentions in the chat, I think the Wizards trade from 18 now, 100%. Kevin, maybe first crack to you, and any sense for how this pick, changes what they do for the rest of the first round here at all?
For me, it wouldn't change much, except maybe you want to move up a couple of spots if you can. The guys I still like for 18 are on the board and probably still will be. So Demon, I had rated much lower. So I would be happy to be completely wrong about Demon because I do like the playmaking, but obviously shot really poorly from 3. Committed a ton of turnovers, didn't make free throws. I love the non-scoring production. He kind of maybe like the young Josh Giddey. I don't know.
Yeah, that's
but, if I'm the Wizards, I mean the guys that I still like at 18 are guys like Rasheer Fleming, and I think Cedric Coward. There's still a pretty good possibility that those guys will be there. So,
agreed. Greg, any thoughts on that?
I wouldn't be moving on that pick.
I saw your mock earlier today with a Senge at 18. Like I think that'd be pretty cool. I think it makes sense for a guy like Will Dawkins to kind of take a swing on that lanky build, a French guy as well overseas. I doubt he did any pre-draft stuff. Again, the finals I believe is still going on, and Saraf stayed and Senge went. But again, that's a big swing pick. And if you were to take a guy like Bailey at 6, maybe, don't take a similar build in a Senge. But you got Trey Johnson. I think everything's on the table. Certainly front court is something they might look for. You brought in Olynyk. Gilt is on non-guaranteed. Holmes non-guaranteed for the most part. You have Sarr and Olynyk now. There's going to be some good forwards at that spot. I think Thomas Sorber would be great for the Wizards there. That's someone I'm targeting. Kevin mentioned Fleming. I really like his ability to stretch the floor. I like his size and wingspan. So those are 2 bigs that I would really like. I've seen a lot of people say Danny Wolf. I would prefer to go a different direction. I think the Wizards, brass has been going in different directions from guys like Danny Wolf. So I think if they go big, Sorber, Fleming, that'd be great. A Senge if he falls. And maybe a trade up. I mean, Derek Queen's been floating a lot. That's kind of what Wizards fans want for a trade up. Whether you're a Maryland fan and that's biased, or you actually think he's a really good player, I know no matter what, he's had top 10 grades, top 5 grades from some. A guy like that's there at 14, 15. It's tremendous value. And if you can trade up and get him, I certainly think that they should consider it.
Yeah, 100%. Rico EUA asked, will Queen fall enough for the Wizards to move up for him? That's really the question. I'm sure he's somebody they'd kick the tires on at the very least, because they like guys with, a little untapped potential relative to where they're able to pick. So that would be worth, keeping an eye on if you're them. A couple other names here getting mentioned. Jean Paul says, I want Noah Penda or Berenger at 18 now. Of the 2, I watch more of Berenger. I think he's a little more interesting to me as a guy that could come in and protect the rim as a shot blocker and something they could use. Merle asked about Malawach. Yeah, we'll see if he's there. If he somehow falls to 18, I'm definitely more open to it. Yeah. At that point in time, Kevin and I are both higher on Asa Newell, who ain't no half Stephen asked about. So I'd love that at 18. That would be the ideal Matt Moderno draft. If we walked out of here with Trey and Asa. So we'll see. But yeah, there's a lot of options here. If I were them, I'd be calling other teams right now. I'd be calling Brooklyn. I think Brooklyn may have a couple picks right before them, if I remember correctly here. It's sort of hard to keep track of where they ended up in the first round, because it seems like they're half the picks of the first round. But there's I don't know, calling up Atlanta at 13, or does San Antonio really want another rookie at 14? Maybe that's somebody you could make some moves with. I lied, Brooklyn. Just not pick between now and then.
Real quick, Toronto just selected Colin Murray Boyles, who was 6th in Yoda. So
good pick.
Not bad.
Shooting's an issue.
So real quick, just to pop through some of these names that have popped up. Derek Queen is somebody that I have rated as a second round pick. He's small, he's slow, he doesn't jump well. And the production wasn't elite. It was, pretty good, but not a lot of assists and not a lot of the kind of markers of a really high skill, crafty player. Maybe there's some stuff that popped to the eye that I wouldn't see because I don't watch. I use the numbers, but players like him tend not to do that great at the NBA level. So hold on, there was a couple others. Oh, Penda is another guy that I've got rated pretty low. Same thing with I think I don't know how you say the name Berenger. I've got him a little higher, but yeah, those are guys that I probably would just not take.
Greg, anybody for you that you absolutely do not want to see them take at 18? That's a realistic option for them. This is a guy you are totally out on that maybe.
Jace Richardson. I've seen a lot of people like him. I do. I think he's really gifted, but he's just small. And I don't think the Wizards are they're going in the opposite direction. They like size. They like wings. I wouldn't even understand it from a Wizards perspective, especially with how many guards you have. You just took a guard. You traded for McCollum. Obviously, that's not a staple there in your backcourt, but you have Johnson. You have Bub. You just took the other Johnson. I wouldn't understand it. Size alone, defensive liability possibilities. That's something I wouldn't understand from a Dawkins and Wizards philosophy, but from a Greg philosophy in terms of my draft board, I wouldn't get it at all. So that would probably be my one. Other than that, I don't know if I have too many can't get. I would understand a lot of the guys that they take.
Yeah, that's a really good one. He didn't immediately pop to mind, but I think that would be a guy I would answer with as well for that reason. I'm not even out on him as a player. It's just, largely for all the reasons you mentioned there. And if people were really bent out of shape about Fierce's size, I don't have the measurements handy, but I want to say Richardson was considerably, shorter of the two of them, or at least an inch and a half, something like that. So, we could, we can kind of talk through what that looks like here too. The Murray Boyles one is really interesting. He's a guy I've just been lower on. He's been so productive. I'm just curious about how it ultimately translates. Again, mentioned how much I like Asa Newell. Murray Boyles punked him in one of their matchups at the very least. But he's a year older, so maybe that's something here. But just a dude that plays really hard and is going to super defend. And I see how he absolutely fits the Masai Ujiri model of just guys that are a little undersized, but everybody on their team is 6'8", and they're just going to switch everyone, I guess is the plan here. But at some point you also have to be able to score baskets on an NBA court. And I wonder how he does that. And some of the other guys that aren't, great shooters right now, I think at least have projectable upside. To me, the Murray Boyles jump shot is broken. And I just don't see him being a shooter with that form as is. There's a weird kind of hitch in the middle. So I don't know. I don't really get that one as much at 9 at the very least.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, you mentioned switchability is great. They have another really good defender. A lot of people have said he's the best defender in this class. He's very good. He's very talented. The shot is the issue. And I mean, in the NBA nowadays, you got 7-footers that are pretty reliable 3-point shooters. It's kind of, known that the league wants to be able to shoot, 1 through 5. It's certainly possible to develop a shot. Lou Dort wasn't a great 3-point shooter. I mean, that first playoffs they had in the bubble, they were just leaving him open. That Houston versus OKC series from 3. And now you look at it, he probably saved them in game 5 against Denver with the 3 threes he made. He made a couple of huge threes in game 7 for the Thunder. They can develop. It's going to take time. That took them 4 or 5 years to get a good 3-point shot. I don't know if you're Toronto, you have the patience that maybe OKC did. But at the end of the day, that's someone that I guess I'm glad is off the board. I didn't think he'd fall to 18, but I wouldn't have at 18. I would have understood the value point of view, but for the Wizards, I've seen some people had him at 3 or 4. It makes no sense to me. You got to be able to shoot the ball in today's NBA, and the fact that he can't. You mentioned it's broken. It probably is Johnny Davis levels with the Wizards. He's going to have to, take a while to rebuild it. And I just
at least as is. Yeah, that's not.
I don't know if certain teams have that patience. Maybe Toronto clearly does, but they know best.
Yeah, there are guys where like if the form's ugly and you think they can rep it out, but it goes in, you can live with that. But if it just doesn't go in and it's ugly, you're probably talking about a rehaul here. So Jay Billis says top available guys. There's some dudes here. He's got 5 dudes next. They're picking for 10 right now. Ultimately, some of these guys are probably going to be available here for Washington. Greg, we talked a lot about sort of positional fit here. Would the Trey Johnson pick at all change what you do from a positional standpoint, or the guys you had, available or top of the wish list for you at 18 still the same guys regardless of what the pick was? Like if they take an ace, would you have a different list at 18? I guess
I would. We talked about this earlier, like a Senge and ace kind of. I don't know why you'd take both. And again, I'm always BPA over pretty much everything. But like if you were to take Malawak at 6, you come back and you take Silver or Newell,
right,
and you have Sarr, something isn't really calculating. And like I said, like they have holes everywhere, but they have bigger holes than some, especially you address the guard position with a guy like Trey Johnson. I think forward makes sense again, or like you need front court depth. You can't just have Alex Sarr on an island there. Especially if you view him as a 4, maybe you want to go out there and get your 5 or get your big to play alongside him in the front court, your bruising center. I think Asa Newell is I think 11 on my final board. Like I know you really like him. I think that would be so cool to have a guy of his caliber playing with a guy of Sarr's skill set. I think Sorber would be a good combo as well. Fleming, it kind of screams, he can stretch the floor as well. Maybe I'm looking for more interior presence from a guy next to Sarr. But certainly I would be looking forward. I think it works out because it was very guard heavy at that spot. Fears, Johnson, Knipple, that they kind of dominated that alongside Bailey, and it's kind of forward dominant towards that part, I'd say with small forwards, power forwards, some centers littered in there. So I think forward makes more sense now, and I think it works because there's going to be a lot of good forward talent there at 18.
Yeah, I'm a little more open to some of the wings that might fall to that range than I would have been originally. Like, at some point, one of these guys is probably gonna fall between a Carter Bryant or a Cedric Howard or someone like that. And at 18, I think you would just take the talent at that point if you get him. Desan asked, do you think CJ or Trey start the year at the 2? By the way, Common Malwatch just went to Houston.
I just saw Mark Williams dealt to Phoenix for the 29th pick and a 2029 first round pick.
Wow. Okay.
That's
he got a first, two firsts essentially.
Two first. I don't know what the Suns just do what the Suns do, I guess.
Somehow he passed the physical this time. Like, I actually think he makes sense for them, but you better believe he's healthy if you're gonna go that route. Otherwise, that's sort of wild.
Yeah, interesting. Sorry, go ahead with CJ and Trey starting. Is that the question?
Yeah, I'll bring Kevin back in here too for this one as well. We'll start with you, Greg. Do you see CJ or Trey starting the year as the shooting guard for this team?
I think CJ. Like, I think Trey would be fun, but the Wizards have shown time and time again, like they will put out the best lineup for the most part. And as you get later in the season, you'll start to see your all rookie lineups. Obviously they're going to try, I would assume, to build up trade value with Middleton, Smart, McCollum. And so maybe they'll play over some of the younger guys. I certainly think CJ McCollum's a million times the player right now than Trey Johnson is. I mean, McCollum averaged 21 points per game last year on the Pelicans. And he also was on a tanking team. So I think that could be similar production, similar role on another tanking team in Washington. And I think, again, like the Wizards, they're not just going to go full tank, try to lose every game. They're going to put out the best lineup they can for the most part, especially early on. And I think CJ gives them the best chance to win. So I think they'll go with him early on.
Yeah, that makes sense to me too. But I do like the idea of like a healthy, open competition. And if Trey Johnson goes out and wins it, I think that's a really good sign for you. Kevin, any thoughts on starting positions for next year already?
I'm very much let's wait and see. If Trey Johnson is somebody who is precocious, I'm perfectly happy to start him. But I think it should be very much open competition. And obviously, Trey Johnson will play a lot of minutes. The Wizards force-fed a bunch of minutes to Keyshawn George and Bub Carrington. And even early in the season, Keyshawn had really a rough start to the season. Got better as the year went on. Bub had rough moments throughout the season. So I would say, see what happens. It would be good if Trey Johnson can be precocious and, win a job. That would be cool. But like I said, he's going to play a lot, I think, coming on, whether he starts or comes off the bench. I wouldn't be surprised also if the Wizards have some veterans moving on and to create some minutes.
Yeah, we talked about like Brogdon with Bub last year being a really good mentor, at least for some portion of the year, which I keep forgetting Malcolm Brogdon exists and is technically, still around in the NBA. But CJ is actually like a pretty good mentor for a Trey Johnson. So I think that's nice. Just a small random anecdote, but probably like one of my all-time favorite basketball memories. I went with a buddy to an NCAA tournament in Greensboro, North Carolina, and both Duke and UNC were in that tournament. My buddy was a UNC fan, and we got to see a CJ McCollum-led Lehigh team eliminate Duke in person. And then it was St. Patrick's Day weekend too, which was awesome. So everybody was like liquored up. And so CJ went nuts, beats Duke. All the UNC fans are going nuts. Then UNC won. It was just like maybe the best all-time basketball nut weekend. So I will always love CJ for that. So full circle, him ending up a member of the Wizards here. So I like it. And yeah, good point here again from Jean Paul that this Malwatch pick is for the Suns. I don't have the volume on, so I'd kind of forgotten that, but that's a part of the actual trade here going on, the Kevin Durant trade there. So Malwatch now going to Phoenix alongside Mark Williams, as Greg mentioned. That's sort of the Spider-Man meme, I think. Put one of them in a cast maybe, and then do the Spider-Man meme, and it's basically the same thing. But yeah, that's That's an interesting fit here at the least. I would love to see them just play the two of them together and just say like F spacing and just get gigantic and see how.
One of them can play guard, right?
Yeah, exactly. Let's see who can. I mean, I keep hearing Malwatch can shoot it, so maybe he's the shooting guard for this team.
Yeah.
Ultimately, if they're going to rely on Bradley Beal to play point guard, I guess stranger things have happened here. Moneyman Steven says the starting lineup of Bub, Trey, Bilal, Keyshawn, and Sar would be really fun. The size is crazy. Agreed. David Angevine says, I like Noah Essengay, power forward with upside. His multiple skills, speaks French, and is very young. All things this front office likes. Agreed. And Ain't No Half Stephen said Duke Lehigh in person Super Bowl. Yeah, that one was awesome. And then David asked, would this front office do a trade with OKC to get this and give up a future pick, ideally Golden State's in 2029? Yeah, I mean, that pick may not even convey anyway here. Yeah, I don't know what's on the table for them. Like, we've seen them be aggressive in the past, so ultimately what they do here, I think, is anybody's game, but I think all things should probably be on the table. We could still also see a veteran move on. Could be a Marcus Smart, makes some sense for somebody. A Corey Kispert maybe gets moved. There's a whole bunch of things that are in the range of possibilities here overall. If you guys are watching on YouTube, hit that like button for us. We definitely appreciate that. Make this more discoverable for other people here. According to the eyeball tracker, we're approaching 4,000 views on the stream here so far. So that's pretty cool over the course of the hour and a half so far. That'll keep us going here past the 18th pick at the very least. I'm on the West Coast and I have not had dinner yet tonight. So we'll see if I make it through the full 30 picks at this point. But that is the plan as of now, unless it somehow goes on into the wee hours essentially. But
don't see how it could. It's a timed event. It's gotta end.
I said the same thing, but somehow these things take longer than they should. And I don't know, there's only so many, I guess, Taco Bell commercials they can ultimately splice in here.
Interesting pick.
Yeah. Also, it says proposed trade. Is that
to Memphis? Yeah, I wonder what they gave up. Wow, to Portland. Portland's trying to contend, I guess, with Holiday. So I don't know what that deal was. Maybe I doubt Jaren or Ja, but like Santiago Dama. I don't. I guess we'll see.
Yeah, let's.
The pick, by the way, is Cedric Coward.
Yeah, Cedric Coward at 11. Yeah, and trading him to Memphis.
And it looks like he's headed to Memphis.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
rerouted. But they're gonna have him put the Blazers hat on, which just is annoying. But
yeah, right. I know we got to fix that at some point here. Like,
the NBA does need to fix that, and really all record keeping in the NBA needs to be fixed in terms of that, because there are picks. If you go through like which GM pick, trying to grade their draft picks, it's impossible because they have picks that were traded. I mean, the Wizards, for example, they list, I can't even remember the second round guard who ended up playing several years in Washington. The Lakers drafted him. Grunfeld sold the pick, and the Lakers picked him. And the guy stuck around for like 8 years in the NBA, had a good productive career.
And he got credit.
It's like, and that goes on Grunfeld? No, he sold the pick. That belongs to the Lakers. So
the same applies to Wizards second round legend Lazar Hayward out of Marquette, because obviously everybody remembers him in a Wizards jersey. Yeah, but you go back and look, and it's like I wanted to look who were the actual successful second round picks, and they listed all these guys that never played for the Wizards and never were intended to be. Member of the Wizards. Like, people still mention, like, I can't believe the Wizards ever traded away Jordan Clarkson after seeing how good he was. It's like, no, they gave up that pick a long time before he ultimately, ended up on the Wizards, air quote. But Kevin, where was Yoda with respect to Cedric Coward? I probably imagine he was a hard eval. He didn't play much Power 5.
Yeah, so I had him a little lower down. Let me see. Where did I have him? I had him, 17th. So this isn't like an insane reach. He's big wing, and with decent athleticism. One of the reasons I didn't push him down because he missed so many games is that his overall production in the 6 games he played this year was pretty consistent with what he had done previously in his college career. And so there really wasn't a reason to nudge him down. If it had been, he shot 75% on threes through 6 games this year, I would have, figured out, I would have done some work to try to assess him more accurately. But because he was pretty consistent with what he had been previously, I just kind of let it ride.
Greg, I can't remember. How were you on Coward?
I like him. I've seen the Kawhi comps. A lot of people say he shoots like Kawhi, which is pretty interesting. I mean, the evolution of his game, that's something that I like to look at as well. Like, how good did you get? And it's tough for these freshmen that are one and done, that are 18, 19. But for someone that really went through the collegiate system the way he did and progressed the way he did, I don't know why a team wouldn't think he can do the same. It's an insane story. It's really shows the level of work that he's put in to be the player that he is, going up each year to higher levels of basketball. So I understand the pick, and I understand Memphis wanting to move up 5 spots, giving up a future one, because they're like, you know what, he's already pretty good, really good player, and we only think he can get better. And I don't know why they wouldn't think that, because he continues to get better. So I was pretty high on him. I had him at, I think, closed at 16, like a little higher. Kevin had him at 17. But I can certainly understand the upside of a team like Memphis that has the assets from the Bain trade and wants to get the guy that they like. So I get it.
It seems like the kind of guy they've been missing from their team for the last couple of years too, just like that really legitimate 3-and-D wing. It was either a 3 or a D and never both. So that definitely makes some sense. Hey to Luke Feldman, thanks for joining us in the chat. He says Essengay, Berenger, I got to keep doing that. Fleming at 18. Again, we've talked about a couple of these names. I think they're all certainly on the table. Ain't no half. Stefan said Newell probably won't get past the Hawks pick. Yeah, they're coming up here 2 picks from now, so he could make some sense for them. Yeah, I don't know. I think that's a guy people are sleeping on. You've seen the Warriors have some success with this over the years of buying in on guys that were higher level high school recruits than they ultimately showed production-wise as college players, but he was still productive on a Georgia team that made the tournament. And, I don't think a ton of people had, Georgia on their early surprise list to make the tournament there. And, they were featuring 2 guys like from Mount St. Mary's. Like, it's not like they were loaded with all this other like SEC caliber depth. I think he was a real piece in them getting so far. So that would be an interesting one for me. And that is a guy to me that fits the Dawkins model, pretty good positional size, especially if you think he can play the 4, theoretical upside as a shooter, can do a little playmaking and things like that as well, has some pedigree. So it'd be cool to at least get one of the guys from this vaunted Montverde class. If they're going to have 4 guys go in the first round here, we got to get one of them, I think, for maybe the best high school team of all time.
Yeah, I mean, Queen's still there. And then I think this was kind of expected towards the end. Mock drafts kind of had him slipping towards the back end of the lottery. I'd be fascinated to see. I don't think Chicago makes too much sense. Like Atlanta.
Yeah, I was just thinking, Greg, like I think Queen to Chicago would be one I would keep an eye on.
You like that? How come? What do you like about that fit?
Only because at some point Vukcevic has to move on, right? Or it's just Vucevic, not Vukcevic. I gotta get that my Eastern European pronunciations right there. But they've had some success using like a skilled big man. That's not necessarily like a prototypical rim protector. So could you bring Queen in, let him learn from Vucevic for a little bit here, and then maybe slowly phase him out or trade him? So they don't seem to just necessarily be like locked in on the it has to be only this like big rim protecting guy. And like they have other positional size at other positions. So maybe they think they can be switchable. And I'm just saying I wouldn't rule it out here. And that's where he starts to get interesting on the board, I think.
Yeah, and another trade, Atlanta traded the number 13 pick to the Pelicans for 23 and an unprotected 2026 first.
Wow. Jeez. Unprotected. So they are really banking on like a Zion comeback here, I guess.
Yeah, they're going in. Whoever's there at 13 that I guess fell past Chicago, they clearly really like them. I mean, they're not good. They were really bad this year, and they're giving up unprotected ones. The next year, wow.
Any thoughts on who it might be? Somebody that makes sense to you?
I mean, like I know that they need some front court in NOLA. They have Poole. They obviously went with Fears there. So I don't know if guard makes too much sense. Like maybe they really like Sorber and they want him to be the anchor. I hope not. Like I hope he falls. I hope Newell falls too. I don't know if Queen maybe didn't go to Chicago and they're like the value is just too good here at 13. I guess we'll see.
I did mention this to both our fellow Wizards Twitter members, Oz and Will, that and didn't say this publicly, but Queen did have a workout for New Orleans that apparently went really well, and they were very interested in him at the time, and that was something that the Maryland coaching staff, former Maryland coaching staff that's now at Villanova, was even mentioning as, hey, keep an eye on New Orleans as a guy for Queen. So obviously 7 was a little too rich for their blood, but maybe they thought, hey, we can get him on the back end here and move up to 13. So if he's not a guy, we'll see.
I guess Senge, this Bulls fan doesn't like it. He probably doesn't know him, but I like him. I think he can be. They have a type. They took Matas last year. Yeah. They're going with Senge here, but I guess maybe you are right that Queen killed that Pelicans workout, because giving up next year's unprotected one in order to move up and get him, like they clearly like him. So I think that makes sense.
Yeah, I again, it's just from trickling down from the coaching staff that they got some feedback that he was well received there, but whether or not that's enough to make them want to put some assets in to go get him is a totally different story.
I'm gonna butt out here, but I appreciate you for having me on. I really appreciate it. The show is great, obviously, and if you're listening, subscribe to Matt. He does everything great. All the Maryland coverage is elite as well. So please show him some love. He does awesome work. And again, thanks for having me, Matt. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you, Greg, for chopping it up with us for a bit. Enjoy the rest of the draft. Fingers crossed for 18, buddy.
Yep. I'm excited to see what you think. Have a good one, Matt.
You too. Peace. All right. We'll keep this thing rolling here. Obviously, Noah Essengay going 12 here to Chicago is interesting. Thought they'd take a big. Thought Queen could have been an option. Obviously, they go a slightly different route there. With Noah, who is a guy with some untapped upside, and obviously not having as strong a playoff run as people would have liked here at the back end. Kevin, I am a crusty old man at heart here, so I'm curious for your perspective on this. I really don't like that Noah bailed on his team in the playoffs to go be at the draft. Whereas his other teammate Ben Saraf is still there playing with them right now. And chose, he obviously is not a green room invite, so it's maybe a little different, but, I guess it's a once in a lifetime thing, and maybe that's always been the dream, but I kind of don't like stuff like that. I want dudes that are going to die on the court for their team and be super loyal.
Yeah, I hear you. I agree with what you're saying. I'm torn because, like you say, I'd kind of rather see him just be there to fight for his team, that kind of stuff. But this is the biggest event of his life, and on a personal level, and this is really what he's doing this all for, is to try to get to the NBA level. So
you got to cut him a break. It's kind of a tough look, like the year Vince
is he
Carter.
Is he going to miss a game though? That's the question.
I think that is the expectation, that by doing it he'll have to miss a game somewhere in the process here. I don't know if it's I think it's this upcoming, day for them is when the next game is. So I don't think you could turn it around here.
I think it would be worse if he was took a month off and was going to work out for teams and stuff.
Yeah, that's totally fair. It just reminds me a little bit of when Vince Carter missed a playoff game to go to his college graduation or whatever. Everybody gave him. I didn't
think he missed the game. He just went, and it was was he going to be tired? That kind of stuff. And it's
that's right. Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah. Either way, I just remember that being a thing at the time. This is a little worse to me because it's just not. I don't know, but we'll see. It may not ultimately matter for him long term. He may just say F playing in Europe, and I didn't want to be there anyway. It was a stepping stone, and the NBA is where I want to be. So we'll see.
Yeah. I will say I missed my own college graduation. I just skipped it, so I didn't. It wasn't. I knew I was graduated, so going to the actual ceremony didn't really do much for me. So I did go for my kids, but
it's a little more important to go for the kiddos, I think.
Yeah.
A couple good quotes being passed along here from Ite said of Trey Johnson. Will Dawkins showed me clips of me taking plays off. Most definitely, that's not the player I want to be, especially in the NBA. that's certainly something I wouldn't want my legacy to be. And then also a quote coming from Bijan Todd. I appreciated him. I needed that. So that's cool. Taking some accountability. And I actually like Will Dawkins and them just like putting it in front of him during the interview and just being like, let's see how you react to it. And, obviously it's all lip service at this point, but I'd still rather you say the right things. And that's a good first step.
Yeah. I mean, if you're going to say something, at least say the right things. All right. Yep. Atlanta's, this is a trade is going to the Pelicans. Okay.
Correct. And I mentioned this before you jump back on, Kevin. I had heard some rumblings beforehand that Derek Queen had a very good workout with the Pelicans. So thought this could have been, a guy that they could do some things to go back and get here. But let's see who the pick ultimately is.
Yeah, they're having some kind of ceremony over there right now.
Yeah, the pick is in, but it will have to wait for a second. Let's see. So Atlanta, they trade the number 13th pick to New Orleans for the number 23 pick and an unprotected 2026 first. I still can't get over that. Like, they're basically banking on being good. It's most favorable of New Orleans and Milwaukee. So yeah, that's a pretty valuable pick. So they must have really been sold on getting back up here. So Atlanta, for moving back 10 spots, they get what could end up being like a monster pick if things don't break right for New Orleans, next season, essentially. Oh, New Orleans is acquiring Derek Queen at number 13, sources said from Shams. You heard it here first, folks. Just remember that. That's our next great breaking news from Live Draft Night podcast history.
Yeah. Okay. Good luck to them. I mean, like I said, I earlier, not a Derek Queen fan. That's not to say that he can't be a good player. It's entirely possible that the numbers are wrong in their assessment of him. It's entirely possible that the eyeball scouts see something with him. As I wrote, I think about it more in terms of probability, and I think with what he's done with his size, with the lack of agility, with the relative ground-boundness of his leaping, that he's not. He's less probable to become a good pro than some other guys. So that said, good luck. It'll be interesting to see this Pelicans team, see if they can figure something out with him, how to fit him with Zion, if Zion can stay on the floor. Trey Murphy and Herb Jones and all those guys.
They're very happy with big playmakers, I guess. Trey can create a little bit, I guess, but Herb is essentially a good playmaker for a wing, and then Point Zion was pretty effective for them, when they ultimately did that. So maybe they think some point forward Derek Queen will work out for them too. Let's check up on the chat here. Jay Random, am I tripping, or does Noah kind of favor Trill Dawkins? I guess I.
All right, while you do that, I'm going to duck over.
Yeah, sounds good.
So.
Let's see, Ite, what are the Pelicans doing? Yeah, it's an interesting one. It's a lot to give up. And then Farzi said, why is ESPN letting Shams spoil the picks? Yeah, I guess they can't really control it. I think what he's getting intel-wise is from the agents. So, it's in their best interest to keep their insider happy, because he uses some of his intel for leverage and things that help them along the way here too. So when they get a call from a team, they're probably letting Shams know, and that's why he reports that at this point. Adam McGinnis says, good move by Atlanta. They don't have their pick next season. Yeah, I agree. From Atlanta's perspective, if you didn't love a guy at 13 and you can maybe get the same caliber guy, 10 picks later, and you get, again, what could be a crazy good pick next year. Granted, they'll have Poole and some of these other guys, but it still stops and ends with Zion, I think, if you're them, and if he can't stay healthy, that's at the very least, could be a fringe lottery pick. So I don't really personally get it. They must just really believe in what they're building. Yeah, Ite is the pick for Queen is insane for an unprotected 2026 pick. I agree. As far as the Pels trading the pick is insane. Yeah, I think insane is the consensus word here from the group. I truly don't understand the thinking, but hey, good, more power to their new front office down there. They got Troy Weaver, former Wizards front office member. So maybe he saw something. I did actually see Troy at multiple Maryland games this year. Again, he was close working for the Wizards, and he loves centers. I can never forget how many centers Troy Weaver took as the GM of the Detroit Pistons. So him ultimately, trading the farm here essentially to move back up and get Derek Queen is the least surprising thing. Troy Weaver stay drafting centers, I guess, is kind of wild here. Yeah, as far as it says, Zion better play 70 games next season. Agreed. Jean-Paul, when is Summer League? I believe it starts July 10th and goes through the 21st or the 22nd. I don't have it in front of me, but it's somewhere in that general ballpark here. So I don't know. Might have to make it out to Vegas here, just seeing how the Trey Johnson pick worked out. If they nail another Matt Moderno favorite here at 18, that might have to change the calculus a little bit. Amar says, forget the draft. Dennis Villeneuve is directing the next Bond movie. That's huge. Curious who the next Bond ultimately is. Heard some stuff about Aaron Taylor Johnson, but won't pretend to know just as much about that as some of the NBA stuff here. But love a good Bond movie, so we'll see how that works out here. Happy for Derek Queen, man. Just by all accounts, a really nice dude. Multiple players on the Maryland team here were asked who their favorite player on the team was this year, and they all answered Derek Queen. So when you're everybody else's favorite teammate as a freshman, that says a lot. He's funny on Twitter, so shout out to him. Again, didn't love him for 6 for the Wizards, but this is right around the range. I thought he made a lot of sense. And hey, going to New Orleans, I think he could be a guy that contributes on a playoff team here sooner rather than later. So we'll see what that looks like. San Antonio picks Carter Bryant. Feels like a very, Spursy kind of pick. Oh, rocking the suit jacket with no dress shirt. That's a bold fashion statement here. Gotta dig that. Yeah. That's a choice. That's a choice. And then got the monogrammed cufflink looking thing there too. So, all right, fair enough. Amar, well, thanks, man. Appreciate the nice words. Adam McGinnis, Queen has such positive energy, rooting for him. Yeah, I think you're going to get a dude that people are going to like, and having a likable teammate is never a bad thing. And have Stephen Bryant to the Spurs. Great pick. Agreed. Amar feels like the Wizards won't be trading up. The price seems too high. Yeah, if it takes you an unprotected pick in next year's draft, I would have traded a lot to get another pick in next year's draft. So, that's that would have been too rich for my blood here. So yeah, let's see. I think there's going to be plenty of good dudes here left at 18. So I feel pretty good about that one too. All right, we'll bring Kevin back in here.
I just had to come back in because Carter Bryant, I love this pick for San Antonio.
Yeah.
He's the only player in the draft to have two steals and 2 blocks per 40 minutes average. Okay. He rebounds and he makes his 2s, and he shot from 3 pretty well too. So I like this kid, and it would have been great if he could have slipped a few more spots, but I love this pick for San Antonio. And like you said, I think there's still going to be some really good players available at 18 right now. I mean, Rasheer Fleming is one of my favorites. He's still sitting there. Asa Newell is still on the board. I've got him 5th overall. Jace Richardson, I know you don't like him so much, but 18, I'd be okay with that. Dutiero still there. Drake Powell, I've got him 19th overall. I don't love his production with his athleticism. You kind of wonder wasn't his production better, but he's long and he is a freakishly good athlete. So I'd be willing to just take a shot.
Does Carter Bryant not being able to contribute more than like 6 and 4 on a good college basketball team bother you at all, Kevin?
Is that what are those just per game stats? Because
he just couldn't carve out enough, minutes on that team.
I wonder. I don't know.
And they were good.
That's weird because he averaged Oh, I'm looking at the wrong guy.
He was productive when he played.
Yeah.
Just didn't
Only
play
19 minutes a game.
Yeah.
Who was on that team that they would play him over?
That's the thing. Like they didn't really have a wing that like should have justified like keeping him off the court as much as they did. They had a lot of guards and a couple bigs. And then ultimately one of their bigs got hurt. And I thought they would maybe use Bryant more as like a small ball 4 and let him kind of play some.
I don't know. So I evaluate based on per 40 minute.
Sure.
And I would need to look a little deeper into that team construction. But this is what this reminds me of. I retroactively ran numbers one time on Danny Green, who, what was he, 50 something pick or something like that in the draft. And when I did, I came out with I believe it was like a top 7 grade for his draft year, and consistent with like a top 10 most years. And I've done the same with a few other players that are like that. And this, these guys who maybe they don't play as much, but end up being good pros. Although Danny Green did play a lot he was just 6th man. So.
Yeah, Green was
he looks good to me.
Yeah, same. Yeah, he was a guy that while they were playing, you were like, damn, why is that guy coming out as much as he is? And Tommy Lloyd knows more about basketball than I will, obviously, so there must have been something there. But it seemed weird at the time because he was productive. So
yeah, I find it odd. I will say there's some other guys that didn't play a lot. Essengay makes sense. Malawach only played 21 minutes a game, which makes sense. The bigs, they often play less.
And they had a good center rotation and things like that. Though the Arizona one was weird just because it wasn't really. Yeah. They were a bunch of 6'4" guys that took a spot. Like 6'3", 6'4" kind of guys.
Maybe the coach just felt like, hey, it's time to go small and be innovative.
Or he was trying to hide him and keep him around for next year to keep his job, to roll and then have him be the star of this year's team, maybe.
Or maybe he just didn't like him. That's always a possibility. You get somebody in and you are watching him play and you just don't like his game.
Yeah, they were much happier watching Caleb Love just shoot every time he touched it. Let's see. All right. Catch up some of the comments. Yeah, David Angevine threw in the actual Summer League dates, July 10th through 20th for most teams. Utah and Golden State both have their smaller ones before that. Jean Paul said the Sun swap is 90% useless for us. Why don't we trade it? I think for the same reason you just said, it's useless. So I don't know what the value is of trading something like that. Amar said Carter Bryant had very similar stats to Keyshawn George in college. I think in terms of per game averages, yeah, sounds about right. Low usage for sure. Brother BKL Contreras. Shout out to everyone in the chat, including the Department of Hoops. Keep the good work on the channel. Appreciate it. Oh, thanks, man. Very nice of you to do that. And that's awesome. Shout out from the South Bronx. All right. I like it. Very cool. Lawrence Lyles, who's the most Will Dawkins player left? I still don't know what a Will Dawkins player is. I've been listening to the rest of the Wizards fan base tell me for months what a Will Dawkins player is, but I think there's enough variance between all of these guys at this point. I don't really know what that is. I would say things like positional size seem to stand out, but if you think Trey Johnson's a 2, he's not necessarily the biggest 2. So between Belisle and Keyshawn, maybe one of them has to play some 4 eventually, even. So I don't know that either of them have size at that position. So,
but I would say if you think, positional size, athleticism,
versatility, maybe. Yeah.
Maybe so you'd be thinking of guys like probably Rasheer Fleming, Drake Powell, those kinds of guys maybe. But I think that Will Dawkins kind of player is the kind of guy who can just play. Hardworking guys who.
Yeah, well, hard to argue with that. Let's see. So, Phoenix traded for Kaman Malawach. Well, they got Kaman Malawach with that other trade ultimately, and traded for Mark Williams, which is interesting. And
that's a trade I just do not get, giving up apparently 2 firsts.
Two firsts for Mark Williams is crazy.
And then
especially
drafting Malawach at the same time.
Yeah, let's draft your understudy completely right after we took you.
And give up 2 firsts, so they spent 3 firsts on 2 drop coverage bigs. And it's like, okay, so you're going to always have a drop coverage big on the floor?
Yeah, and they get Charlotte also gets Vasily Micic in the trade as well, and I think he's like an actual serviceable rotation player too. So
yeah. So real quick, OKC just made their selection, and they picked Thomas Sorber from Georgetown.
Yeah, Sorber seems like a really good Oklahoma City kind of guy, right? Like sorry, I'm right next to a naval base here, so I don't know if you can hear the airplanes taking off above me in the background here, but
they actually could, yeah.
Yeah, they're working it. Yeah, Sorber makes sense, right? He's just a very different guy than Chet, so he gives them a totally different look, and I think that's a smart way to build a team, is just put as many different looking dudes up there as possible. Obviously, Sorber not from the DMV, but played at Georgetown, so I'm counting him as one of our own. So nice to see him go to a really interesting situation for him, as they're looking to reload, on some of these guys. Like, they probably can't keep Hartenstein and Chet longer term. So can Sorber be like the cheaper, replacement for somebody like Hartenstein? I think that's just a really smart way to go about it.
Yeah, I agree. So still likely to be, let's see, we're now 16 Wizards, only 2 more picks. There's a possibility Ace and Newell could still be there. But they should be able to get like Newell, Rasheer Fleming, one of those guys. So that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, I'm just kind of surprised. There's always a couple guys that fall here too, and I think the interesting one right now is also Kasparas Yakuchonis from Illinois. By all accounts, sort of. Let's see, he was 10th on consensus big board here. The most recent one I had pulled up. So this is already a little bit of a fall. I know they just took a guard. He's a guy I would definitely strongly consider taking as another guard if he were there at 18, just because I have him a lot higher than that. I know you were lower on him, Kevin, but that's a top 10 pick for me for sure. I have Yakuchonis 6th overall.
Yeah, I had him 21st.
Okay.
So but picking him 18, I wouldn't object to it.
Yeah, that's at least the same range.
Especially if like Newell, if the next picks are like, Newell and Rasheer Fleming, I'd be okay with going that. I would probably go Jace Richardson at that point, even though he's little, because I do love the production, but
I just can't do it. I'm done watching shrimp point guards. The days of watching Howell Neto and Isaiah Thomas and Ish Smith and all those guys.
Hal Neto was a
small forward. Yeah, he was a small forward. I understand. He's a very short small forward. No one's 6'1" and under. We're just those days are behind us. Just so.
When.
Go on.
I'm sorry. I was just, because I think you were glitching there for a second, but anyway. I was just hearkening back to the days when Denny got hurt and Scott Brooks got the team to the playoffs by playing Westbrook, Beal, and Howell Neto as their small forward, and that's when they had the 3-headed monster at center, and Captain Hook and all that kind of stuff. Gafford and the kid from Maryland, who's now very old.
Alex Len.
Yeah, Alex Len. And somehow or another, they went like 18-7 to finish out the season and made the playoffs. Like legit made the playoffs. They actually got the 8 seed. So, they got housed, but as expected. But still, that was it was funny. That's when everyone was screaming about firing Scott Brooks, and he actually did a good job. I kind of got forced into it, but it turned out to be a pretty good job keeping that team together and stuff. So.
I actually think that was his best coaching job the whole time he was here, right? Like he zigged when everybody else zagged, largely, like you said, because he had to, but he didn't put that roster together, and he found a way to push the right buttons for a bit. So
I think he actually got a little fortunate that Avdia got hurt, because Denny at that point in his career was a self-check. He couldn't shoot. He could only drive right. He had really no left hand. He's really improved his skills and, in his time in the league. So Avdia getting hurt forced him into playing Neto, who was more skilled. Neto could shoot the three. He could do some playmaking. Gave up a lot on defense, of course, but I think he really boosted the offense just because they replaced the self-check with somebody who could at least catch kickouts and make threes,
Yep.
and then could also drive closeouts and stuff. So, anyway, we don't need to continue rehashing.
Sure.
That was 5 years ago, 4 years
Good
ago.
old days. It feels like a lifetime.
Yeah.
All right. In response to me saying I still don't fully know who a Will Dawkins guy is, Lawrence Lyles decided to be a smartass in the chat and said, I must be a new Wizards fan then. So he said, Will Dawkins types of players refer to guys that can defend, shoot, play make, and taller than their position, taller than average at their position. So Bub Carrington did not guard anyone in college, so that's a check against you. Tristan Vukcevic can't guard anyone now, so that doesn't count. Did you see the shooting percentages of literally their entire team this year? So no one really know that any of those guys can shoot, so that's a question mark. And really none of them showed above average playmaking for their position in the college ranks either. And you can go back and look that up too before you decide to say dumb shit like I must be new to the fan base. So keep it moving. All right, what else we got here? David Angevine. Sorber makes perfect sense to OKC. He's from Philly, I think. Yeah, that's correct. Sorber's a guy I got to talk to first time at Georgetown Media Day before I knew he was going to be really good. And he was so humble, and people asked him about being the next in the long line of Georgetown centers that were, drafted and great and things like that. And he was just really complimentary and knew his history, which I thought was cool. So I like that for him. Adam McGinnis, thoughts on Liam McNeely for the Wizards at 18? Again, I'm really big on them, taking a guy that makes some sense and add some shooting, and McNeely would certainly do that. So he and Trey Johnson would be a big boost in the shooting department. So, I wouldn't be mad at a guy like that. I like McNeely. I think he was a little miscast and a little underwhelmed by the lack of playmaking they had at UConn this year. So they asked him to do some of those things. But he's really more the guy. Like, I thought there were a lot of lazy Con Knipple to Corey Kispert, comps, but I think McNeely is probably like a little more along those lines because you don't want him doing, a ton right away here and getting out over his skis. I think that's what hurt him this season. So I wouldn't dislike that pick, and he's from that stacked Montverde team. I just want one guy from that team, Kevin. Just one guy from this elite college basketball team would be cool, or elite high school basketball team would be cool. All right. Hanson Yang goes 16 to Portland.
Whoa.
Probably one of the dumbest picks I think I've ever seen personally. No disrespect to Mr. Yang, although I don't know how I can say that and have it not be.
Hanson Yang is a surprise.
Yeah. I know. Interesting.
I don't know if you can hear me.
Yep.
It looked like the page reloaded. I have Hanson Yang 67th on my board.
Yeah, I wouldn't have had him in draftable range either, so that's a little surprising to me.
Yeah, that's wow.
All right, yeah, doing something a little different. So that's a choice. But hey, more power to them. That's frees up another guy that's available for Washington to take at 18.
Yeah, seriously. Well, wow. So they're guaranteed to get at least either Ace Newell or Rasheer Fleming. So if they want to go by the Yoda big board, they got them there.
Yeah, no, I mean, wow. All right. Yeah, Jean Paul mentioned that Raphael and James Barlow said that Hanson Yang was really climbing since the combine. I had heard that from them as well. I don't know that fringe lottery was exactly what we were talking about there. This is a guy that, showed out in one of those combine games really well, showed a lot of touch and skill and more than he'd shown in actual game settings to this point. But That's just that one's a little too rich for my blood. In the CBA last year, averaged about 17 points and 10 rebounds, 3 assists, 2.5 blocks, but it's a considerably more athletic league here in the NBA. So we'll see how much the rim protecting carries over.
It doesn't jump well. He tested out okay overall, but I don't know. I wouldn't make that pick. A lot of turnovers.
At 36, I'd be a little more interested. Like I could at least see it. 16 is pretty wild. But hey, could end up being wrong. You and I both have historically liked more of the Memphis picks than not. So they zigged for a change here. So wow, yeah, I'm a little thrown by that one personally. But again, this is really cool for Washington. I think you've got your choice of a lot more guys, and we'll see ultimately what Minnesota does. Rasheer Fleming is a guy that I would be strongly interested in if I were Minnesota. Ultimately, like some people have comped him to like a Naz Reid type player, and that's something that they're going to be having to keep an eye on here longer term. Like, you probably can't keep Gobert at that price tag for forever. Do you keep Julius Randle around? Can you keep Naz Reid around long term? So at some point, they're going to need some reinforcements in the front court. So yeah, Fleming will be one of those guys here.
Yeah. So the pick is in over for Minnesota. So it'll get announced pretty soon. Yeah. Minnesota seems to like those little guards lately, so maybe they'll pick Jace.
Yeah, that could be an interesting one. I mean, they've got to find like a real Mike Conley replacement at some point, and maybe Jace is the guy to do that.
Maybe.
All right, Kevin. Other than Asa Newell or Rasheer Fleming, who and Jace Richardson, who is next on your board?
So let's see. Adu Tiero. Let's see, Drake Powell, Yakushonis, Nick Clifford. We got some guys like that in the list here. I wouldn't go too much further down than that. So the one fun guy, he popped up pretty high for me in Yoda, and it's just he's such a weirdo. But I'll just talk about him briefly anyway because we're not going to mention him again tonight or tomorrow. Caleb Grill from Missouri. He's 25.
Shoots the shit out of it, though.
He can really shoot it. And so I would love to see him go someplace like Denver and, have like 4 guys have very minor injuries or illnesses. And so they have to play him like 38 minutes and he's going to knock down like 11 of 19 from 3 with Jokic just feeding him the ball in every way imaginable. So the pick is in, and Minnesota selected Barron. So the French dude, Barron J.
Yeah, Barron J. So again, another big dude that eventually can slot into that front court for them longer term. Far as you mentioned it, Minnie just got their Gobert protege. I'm sure this is somebody who looked up to Rudy Gobert a decent amount growing up. So from David.
So Washington is on the clock, and Asa Newell, I've got him 5th. He's on the board, and Rasheer Fleming is on the board. So I'd be happy with either of those guys.
Yeah, agreed. I've got in order left on my board: Yakushonis, Asa Newell, and Rasheer Fleming. So I feel pretty happy with any of the above here, any of those above guys at this point in the draft. But
so over at the
froze on the skim. All right, we'll keep this one rolling here while we wait for Kevin here. Is a little glitchy there. When he's ready, we'll bring him back in. Yeah, definitely some interesting names here. Let's try this again. Ooh. Kevin, audio check.
Yep, can you hear me?
Okay, now I got you. Cool. Yeah, it was chopping up a little bit there. So yeah, I think both of us would be really happy with Asa as a pick. And again, not that they should be worried about fit, but I do think the fit is really good. I would love to see him next to a guy like Sarr longer term here and just kind of build them out. So who knows?
Help me out. How tall is Newell? He's not like 6'8", 6'10", right?
Yeah, he's somewhere in between, right? I think he measured at like 6'9.25", not in shoes. So
yeah,
I think that's decent enough height to be able to play both the 4 and the 5. Let's see, Asa Newell combine.
Yeah, I have him basically. He didn't get any bonuses or so. In Yoda for his size. So okay, so this is really rude. ESPN went to a commercial when the Wizards were on the clock at 6, and now they're at a commercial when they're on the clock at 18. Come on.
This is the most ESPN thing here of all time. Although showing an Alien Earth commercial, I am very much excited about that. Hopefully, we can get an alien on the basketball court with our pick. So maybe this is a good omen. We can always remember this Alien commercial fondly from producer creator Noah Hawley, who did a couple other really good shows too.
So real quick, let me plug a show while they're doing a commercial. Let's do a commercial. So I think this is on Max, HBO Max. I think that's where I saw it. Anyway, it's called The Swarm, and it's based on a book. It's a German production, but it's done in English. And my wife and I put it on, like Sunday morning, thinking we're going to watch like one episode, maybe 2, just sort of kill time. We ended up binging 6 episodes, and then I had to stop because the NBA Finals were going to start. But we binged 6 episodes. We stopped just basically like eat and that kind of stuff, and the show was really good. So it's this German production. It's actually the most expensive TV show in German history.
Okay,
and they spent more than $50 million making it. And we just loved it. So anyway, if you get a chance, check it out.
Is it the one about the whales?
Sort of. That's what's on the poster.
The movie jacket, yeah.
Yeah, but
movie jacket,
movie poster. It's much more complex than that and much more interesting than that. And it looks, when you look at it, you think at the little thumbnail, you think this is going to be Jaws, but with orcas. And it's not that at all.
Okay.
So,
well, that's a good tease.
It's pretty good, and the way they leave it, it seems like it invites a second season, but apparently it didn't do well enough with audiences, at least not yet, to
justifying that price tag is probably hard for them.
Yeah. So, which is it, but the quality is good, the acting is really good, the writing is really good.
Okay, I dig it, folks. You got something to listen to once Summer League is over here. Once something to go watch after Summer League.
They got 8 episodes, well worth your time.
Let's catch up on the chat a little bit. David Angevine said, Kevin, you were always picking someone as old as the average chat age. And I said that in response to Caleb Grill. That's not true. He's got Jace coming up here. He's young.
Matt's the one who likes the old guys. I just mentioned him because we're not going to talk about him any other time.
I like the silver foxes of NBA basketball here with my draft prospects. Business be booming says, why don't you like Wolf? He plays like Jokic. No. If by you mean he is big and he's been allowed to throw a pass or two for sure. I think asking Danny Wolf to come to the NBA and be basically a pick and roll playmaker is a tougher ask. But hey, I'd happily be wrong. I've got receipts from him at Yale of him being a guy I would take him in the first round last year, and I'd still take him in the first round this year. It's not the guy I would want to build the Wizards around personally.
I would not take him in the first round. I mean, when I look at him, the offensive efficiency was very poor.
Yeah, a lot of turnovers.
He assists in part because there's so many turnovers. He's almost 1-to-1, and he didn't shoot it very well.
I don't buy the shooting either. That's my biggest gripe, to be honest with you. Is just it's a very weird release. And
yeah, when I ran the numbers on Jokic, retroactively, he came on before I did Yoda. When I ran the numbers on him, he graded out like a top 5 pick in any draft. So and Wolf I've got in the 50s. So I don't see that comp. That's not to say he can't get there, because as I've said a number of times, Wizards pick is in, by the way.
Ooh,
And,
let's do it, baby.
We've got some breaking news. Let's see what it is.
Oh, ah. The suspense. Wow, we just took Walter Clayton Jr. at 18 and are trading him to Utah.
Yeah, it's going to be okay. Very interesting.
Osprey Gonzalez in the
I
chat.
do like Clayton. So, but where are the Wizards now? What are they what are they getting?
I wouldn't mind seeing them even roll it over into next year's draft. To be honest, I like that a little better at this point, although there are still plenty of guys here that I did like. So I don't know. We'll see. Did Utah have any other first-round picks? I don't think so. Utah is 21, so maybe it's just a flip, and we get something out of it. I wouldn't be mad at moving
something
back.
for the favor.
Yeah,
I don't mind that pick at all. I mean, I've got Clayton 20th, so not much of a reach. And he's a good shooter. He plays hard.
Let's see.
Strong.
Where did I have Walter Clayton? Yeah. I had Clayton 24, so not crazy far off of this either. Same kind of range. But yeah, we'll get to have the everlasting picture of Walter Clayton in a Wizards hat on draft night, and then never see him.
Yeah, this is again. Come on, get this right. They made the trade. The pick is moved. Don't make him wear the Wizards hat. That over on ESPN, by the way, they're showing Walter Clayton's football highlights, I guess, from high school, which, to be honest, look pretty impressive.
Yeah. How that's the reason he ended up at Iona in the first place, is he was a much more serious football prospect, and then ultimately.
So over in the playback, Rocky Boy comes in with if the Jazz need him to play corner, they're set.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's
great.
Got him covered, but that did ultimately derail his basketball recruitment a good amount, and he was this football guy that was a lower heralded high school recruit, and Rick Pitino saw him play and was like, "Holy shit, who is this kid? That's the guy we should be watching." And he ends up at Iona, plays really well, and then obviously makes it to Florida for a big boost in salary, wins a championship, and now here he is in the first round here again.
He looks pretty deadpan, so maybe he isn't quite sure where he's going to end up.
Yeah, that's either, oh shit, I think I'm about to go to Washington, or I just don't know what's happening with me in general. Anthony Shaw said, damn, stayed up watching for nothing. I wouldn't say that yet. Let's see what the details of the trade are. Yeah, Utah has that pick at 21, so could be interesting.
Okay, Silver is announcing the pick. Let's see if he does a trade. No, he did it. Wizards are selecting Walter Clayton Jr. He's on the phone.
Yeah, per Shams, we're getting the 21st pick and second round picks, plural. So I'm not mad at it.
If the Wizards think they can get whoever they were going to take at 18 and 21, then okay.
I mean, it clearly wasn't Walter Clayton Jr. So, or I got to imagine that's the first call. Well, if we give you 18, who are you going to take? So that's a nice moment for him, getting hugged from mom. A couple tears, a lot of tears this draft, I'm noticing. But that's okay. I don't blame them for that. It's a big moment. So more power to him. This is big, Kevin. I think if you could get a couple extra second round picks, we had to replenish our stock. We were down to only 21 of them, I think, over the next 3 years. So this should help us in the long term here.
Look, if somebody needs a second round pick at some point, they have to come to the Wizards pretty much, because nobody else is going to have them.
That's a good point. We could just own the second round. Ite says the Wizards get number 43. That would be interesting.
Yeah, my guess is if they did get 43, that pick will probably be on the move, or the 40 will be on the move. I will say if you Will Dawkins' pattern through this is his third draft with the team, is that he shuffles those picks, second round picks around quite a bit.
Yeah, we've been saying for a while here. I can't imagine. They would want 3 rookies from this class again this year, but I also didn't think that last year either, and they were aggressive with it. So Amar said, why trade down 2 second-round picks? Or second-round picks aren't that much capital. I would remind you that second-round picks have been nice filler for them in some trades, and that was also the thing that allowed them to move up and get Koulibaly the other year too. So I think just a sweetener and some deals to help you be aggressive to get the guys you want, it's worth it. So if you were convinced the guy you really want at 18 is still there at 21, then why not do it? John Paul says Utah sends the number 43 pick and second rounders in 2031 and 2032 to Washington in this deal. So we'll see, like you said, Kevin, if they ultimately want to pick a third time here.
There's a 7th grader that Will Dawkins already has.
Yeah, right. Yeah. He's been at some DMV middle schools watching for the next round of elite talent.
Did you see that kid? That kid's got the ball on a string.
Right. Yep.
Well, it's actually a string, but
good. Yeah, this is interesting. I just curious who their guy is that they felt confident that nobody else is going to try to get. We know it's not Hanson Yang, so we don't have to worry about that one all that much. But
look, when Hanson Yang came off the board, the Wizards were like, damn it.
No,
we need out.
Yep. We don't even need the draft anymore. It's just over for us. It would be interesting to see if they take a stash at 43. Could they get one of these European guys and similar to what they did with Vukcevic, wait a while to bring him over until some of these veterans are cleared out? That wouldn't surprise me a ton at this point, especially if that guy speaks French, as we've talked about at length here. So do they feel like they could get, a Ben Saraff or a Noah Penda or one of these kind of guys, later in that range? Wouldn't be crazy.
Look, I just want them to pick, if they're going to move back, pick Yannick Condon Niederhauser.
There you go. Luke Feldman in the chat, same thing. So,
number 1 in the all-name draft.
It's pretty good. Yeah, I mean, we talked about him in one of these pre-draft shows, but I would not be mad at that at 43 either. And I think by virtue of being on an underwhelming Penn State team, he's probably going a little later than he ultimately should. Yeah. As always, if you're watching the YouTube, folks, hit that like button for us. We always appreciate it here. Hopefully more people will find this and be discoverable, and we can continue, doing this as a draft thing. Ite said, speaks French or Australian. Love that.
Yes, those Australians and their weird language.
That was my guy I liked at 40 for them. If they did want to take a big at some point and get a Rocco Zikarsky from the Brisbane Bullets, if he's there at 43, I think that'd be another guy I like.
Oh, I thought you were going back to Niederhauser. If he's there at 40, I wouldn't be upset if the Wizards took him. And that by the way, yeah. Niederhauser is exactly the kind of guy I'm talking about. When you talk about an athletic rim runner, he's the kind of guy that I think you can get in the various spots in the draft. I don't think you need to use the 6th pick to take a guy like Malawach, who's not as athletic. Maybe he's going to be a better player, but anyway, that I'm just saying.
For folks listening to this, I told Kevin this one already, but the first time I saw them being Penn State play this year, I went, "Holy shit, who is this guy?" What? It was just one of those things where he was dunking on people and almost blocked a guy with 2 hands, and I was just like, "All right, this dude's incredible." And they weren't good this year in a good league. They couldn't shoot it. The only other player of noticeable value on their team was Ace Baldwin, and I think he's a guy that if he'd have come back, they probably wouldn't have gone back to Penn State, unfortunately, for our guy Greg, the Penn State attendee. But he could have blown up somewhere, on an SEC school or something like that, I think, and really moved his way up in the draft. So if you can get him at 43 this year, I'm all for that too.
Yeah, he reminds me a lot of JaVale McGee. I don't know anything about his personality, but all right, Nets are picking. They took Nolan Traore.
Wow. Okay. One less Frenchman on the board here.
I got to say, I love it in part because the guys that I want the Wizards to pick, they're still there.
Yep.
And Traore is a guy that I had rated in the 60s. So, which I'm perfectly content to be completely wrong with that. But he just did not pop.
Yeah, it didn't really do it for me watching him play either. I mean, I think somewhere in the late first would have been fine. But this seems like a little bit of a reach for me personally. City of Oaks mentioned the Illinois kid is driving a lot. I much prefer Yakashonis of the two. And
Same.
I don't know. Well,
yeah, very much the same.
We'll see.
I'm a little surprised by it, but hey, you know.
The number 43 pick and second rounders in 2031 and 2032. It's just really funny to me to keep reading that because who knows what that team will look like, 7 years from now, or like it's just could be the 30th pick, or maybe it's protected, I guess, or it could be the 58th pick if Utah's good by then. Who knows?
It's going to be Will Dawkins' son making that pick.
Right. Yeah, exactly. In a family business with some nepotism, you never know here. David Angevine mentioned Noah Penda at 21. I think, we'll see. There's only a handful of European guys left that could be an option for them. So
yeah, I'm laughing right now at Scott Borland's posted 21. Yeah, ESPN at this point they need to go ahead and go to commercial when the Wizards are on the clock at 21.
That'd be hilarious if that was just their bit from now until the next couple of years, especially in the second round, just a commercial every 3 or 4 picks. David Angevine said, is Kevin surprised Asa Newell is still on the board? I think we both are. I mean, like that, it's top 10 guy for both of us being here at 20 is kind of wild. And it wouldn't surprise me if someone like Miami took him because he kind of fits that Khalil Ware sort of vibe.
The consensus mock had him had Asa Newell 18th.
Yeah.
So
this is that
I
range.
think you and I were both higher on him than consensus. That said, I mean, he's still there. I'd love to see if the Wizards can take him at 21. Hey, that's great.
Amar says, seems like the Wizards knew who was being picked at and after 18 to feel comfortable moving down. You had to have some sense for what these teams were going to do. With what these picks, Farsi said, Demon going 8th, New Orleans trading 2026 unprotected 10 spots, Hanson Yang at 16. This draft is crazy. Yeah, there's been a lot more movement than I would have expected. Ite said Demon and Traore, what a combo. Hostway said, I would be a fan of Will Riley. I don't know about you guys, but I was thinking Will Riley actually makes some sense to me as a Dawkinsy kind of pick. I have him 21 actually on my board, so I would be fine with that. At that point, that's the range I valued him in. I have a couple guys ahead of him. Again, Yakashonis, Newell, Fleming. I have Liam McNeely at 19, so Will Riley at 21 wouldn't be a total
I've got him 30th, so it wouldn't be like a massive reach, but like I said, I would rather have Newell or Fleming at this at 21.
Yeah, it's funny. Like he and Yakashonis were both hurt by kind of the makeup of that team. I think we talked about this pre-draft, but the stat was like when they shot more than 28% from 3, they won like every single game they played, and when they didn't, they lost every single game they played. So just the spacing was abysmal, and these guys had something to do with it, obviously. But Will Riley was really productive as a freshman, despite being not physically ready to be productive as a freshman, I think. So he's a little maybe ahead of schedule here and more of a long-term play. I could see him, being similar to what they valued with someone like Keyshawn George. So wouldn't surprise me a ton. Hostway also said Kasparis falling is in the Cam Whitmore territory of what's going on. Yeah, this one's weird to me too. I think this is a guy all year, that was in the top 10 lottery-ish range, and now all of a sudden we're 21. I think the shooting, again, is sort of the big indicator. He's got to shoot it to be productive, but I think you can easily explain his lack of shooting just based on, one, his own forearm injury, 2, the lack of shooting on the rest of the team. Being a freshman in the Big Ten in front of the teams. Let's hear it. Adam again.
Really not good at TV.
Yeah, it's different. Report on Hanson Yang. There was concern among other teams in his range were going to take him if the Blazers didn't pick him at 16, and the Blazers loved him. Mike Schmitz, former ESPN draft guru there, moves up to get his guy as the assistant GM of Portland. I'm still a little surprised by that one, personally.
Me too, and I was also surprised with Hanson Yang. So I'm going to repeat that for the playback group. That there was a report that the Blazers were concerned that somebody else was going to pick Hanson Yang around that spot, and so they traded in so they could get him. And as Matt pointed out, Mike Schmitz, former ESPN draft guru, is working in the Portland front office, and they made that move to get him. Obviously. I'm not a fan of that pick. I had him in the 60s, so seriously, a don't draft grade. So, for whatever that's worth.
Yeah, just weird. But there's a lot of dudes here. Like Nick Clifford is a guy that could play NBA minutes right now. I'm not opposed to a guy that could come in and actually be productive for the Wizards here day one. Again, taking a dude that can actually shoot.
All right.
It'd be nice.
Jack Ushonis is off the list. Miami just picked him.
Yeah, that seems like the perfect Miami pick. And when he's their starting point guard in like 2 years, we're gonna be like, shit. So he must not have been the guy for the Wizards. I don't know if they felt confident enough to do it. But again, Kevin, the two guys we were liking the most here. Again, I had him high, but also Newell and Newell and Fleming immediately next. Those were your next two guys. So either way, we're going to get
Fleming,
some dudes.
Richardson, those would be my next guys. Yeah.
Al says Drake Powell or Fleming going to be the next pick. We heard it here first. Kevin's been on the Drake Powell bandwagon for a long time. David Angevine seems to like that idea.
Yeah. So let me just real quick, Drake Powell. His combined, so I use combined vertical, that's standing vertical plus, I guess running vertical. Mm-hmm. And he measured it. His verticals together measured 80 inches, which is just freakish. That's more than 2 standard deviations better than your average wing. So, and then he also tested a full standard deviation better in terms of the agility drills, the way I score them anyway. And he was a standard deviation better in terms of length. So, Drake Powell is interesting. Now, it does call into question why he wasn't more productive with all of those tools. But, if the Wizards coaching staff or some coaching staff could unlock those tools and get him to harness those tools into actual productive basketball play, then, he could be a really good player. He can shoot. He can do some things on the court. It's just he didn't do enough of them, and so maybe there's a motor issue. I don't know what the issue is, but it's at least worth the question. But those athletic tools are really outstanding.
Yeah, for UNC, they had 3 guards essentially, and then the 2 freshmen in Powell and Ian Jackson, and they were actually better, I thought, when those guys Powell and Jackson played, but they didn't seem, to actually want to play them together, which really hurt that team. So I didn't really understand.
Real quick, David, if you can always come over to playback. On playback, most of the time I'm running. I do most of the Wizards playbacks for their games, and when they do, I'm usually listening to the opposing team's broadcast, in part because Chris Miller is a real challenge to listen to, and so Drew Gooden is a little bit less of a challenge, but the two of them together are pretty rough. I say this as a connoisseur of NBA League Pass. The Wizards have the worst broadcast in the league, and I don't think it's very close. So please, if you want, come on over. We'll give you a VIP, and we'll hook you up. You can come in and watch with me.
There you go. Yeah, Kevin does a great job over there. I think that's a fun way to watch the game too, because it's a little more interactive, and you can actually kind of hear reactions to your questions and in the comments and things like that too. So good call.
We do have fun.
And that's what's important. This is a game ultimately, right? It should be enjoyable. Hearing he hotter than fish grease or he shot from Poolesville and things like that. Not my favorite. As far as he said, commercial again. Yes. The Wizards are on the board and we're going to commercial. You literally cannot make this shit up.
ESPN streak is unbroken.
That's crazy.
I will just say this, having at least they're not showing Tyrese Halliburton getting hurt again.
Yeah, please. Don't need to see any more clips of that. Thank you.
Yeah, that was frustrating.
City of Oak says Wizards going to trade down again. They obviously didn't love anyone at 18 to stay there. Maybe pick up more future picks. How many more second round picks do we need at this point? That'll be the Wizards round of the draft. Al says he thinks he goes with a nice complimentary guy, and either of those two fit. And if they are better than that, just that role, that's even better. Yeah, I agree. David said, sign me up for playback. I will try that. Yeah, definitely. I would strongly recommend that. If you go over to Bullets Forever, we'll post a bunch of stuff before the season too about, how you can get to that easily and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
Al said, I think the Wizards are sponsored by every commercial. Yeah, it seems that way. And Bruno V says, Asa Newell has to be the pick right. Hey, man, I would very much like that to be the case. And Scott Borland said commercial. I told you, Scott, you nailed it. You were 100% right. Each of our second round picks, we better still take commercials in 2032 or wherever those picks were as well. But yeah, getting Asa would be big. I think that'd be like an all-time draft. We did talk about some of the other guys. Will Riley came up here as a guy that, the Wizards could ultimately like. I did see him being, a guy that would make some sense for Will Dawkins. Scott Borland said Wizards took Will Riley. I don't see that anywhere yet personally, but
hasn't been announced yet. So there's still a commercial, but they say the pick is in.
Yeah, I don't see that coming through here yet. If anybody else wants to confirm that, feel free. But again, it fits sort of what they did with Keyshawn George on draft night of a freshman guy there that got more than he got to show based on the situational context of the team. And I'm always in favor of taking young bouncy wings. And I think Riley's got some upside there. So again, I had him exactly 21 on the board here. So, we'll see what that looks like. Okay. So where are we at? Yeah, still nothing from Shams right now.
Yeah, they're saying in the comments here that apparently Greg is saying it's Will Riley is the pick.
Huh.
So, and then Adam said it is Will Riley, and
Okay.
I see somebody saying it's a trash pick. Still don't see the pick coming through yet, so maybe it's going to come through shortly. See, this is the problem with them taking a commercial break.
I know, right? That's just to make us have to wait it out here longer. Very, very interesting. Anyone not familiar with Will Riley was freshman at Illinois this year. They made a decent run in the NCAA tournament. 6'7" player, again, averaged 12 and a half and 4 rebounds, 2 assists on a Big Ten team. Didn't do much from a stock steals perspective. It was a little just undersized, like underbulked. Only started 9 of 35 games, but a decent shooter overall. I think long term he's got touch, but only shot 32% from 3, only 72% from the free throw line. Didn't get there a lot, but I do buy the shooting longer term. According to the chat here, thanks Adam, that Jeff Goodman reported it. We'll see. Jeff is pretty locked in on college basketball, so if he's saying it, I would imagine that he knows what's up. So City of Oaks, he's been weaknesses. He's skinny and lacks physicality, which hurts him defensively. Those things are very much true. He got kind of bullied this year, but can always add strength. So I'm not worried about that much.
Yeah. All right. Adam Silver is making the announcement.
The 21st pick in the 2025 NBA draft, the Utah Jazz select Will Riley.
Yeah, I'm not mad at it. I talk about this all the time from a team building perspective. Like, wings are the hardest guys to get in free agency because if they're good, they never become available because they make a ton of money, and the not so good ones, you just, you need more of those. So I think the question with Riley is just like, if he bulks up and adds some strength, what does he turn into? And again, then just positional value. You can never have too many wings. We just saw that in the playoffs. So can he be this team's Aaron Wiggins or something like that? I think that's not a bad.
Yeah, I mean, I don't hate the pick. I think
Where did you have him?
he's a solid guy. I had him. Looks like his final spot was around 20, so it's
Okay.
not terrible. Like I said, I would have still preferred like Newell, Rasheer Fleming, one of those guys, but I don't hate it, don't love it, but it's okay.
We could package all of our second round picks and somehow maybe get back up into the first round again if we wanted to do that.
This is again, man. They already reported the trade, and so, but they're out here. He's got the Jazz hat on, pretending he's going to the Jazz. Don't love it.
Yeah, it's just sort of lame when even he's already probably heard that he's not going to ultimately up there. Al said if he's offensively sound day one, I'll be happy with it because I have to get more guys who don't have to teach offense. I mean, he shot very poorly this year across the board. I'm not too worried about the shooting because, again, I thought he showed some decent touch around the rim here, but it's kind of a little bit out in front of his face, the jump shot, and just you're betting on the tools, and he's a decent athlete. He's skinny. I think if you can get a big wing, though, it's not, the worst thing to go for here. Adam said, I remember this guy being super skinny in Illinois games. Yep, that is sort of the takeaway here. I would have rather us moved up one pick to get his teammate, fellow freshman, Kasparas Yakijonas. Ken Yakijonas is like the guy that if you look at his European accolades, like those are the kind of guys that end up successful in the NBA when they're really good internationally like he was. So I think that's a bit of a bummer. Let's see. Can we actually get some guys with some muscle? All these guys are so skinny. Yeah, I mean, at some point they're going to have to play grown men to start winning games here, but I think that's okay for a while.
I will say the skinny thing is, that's a lot of times that's what you're going to get with 19, 20-year-olds.
Especially if you take a freshman.
Yeah. You get them into the NBA and you get them with the professional, strength coaches and nutritionists and all that kind of stuff. They'll fill out. You saw with the Wizards, a lot of those young guys were adding muscle and definition during the season last year. So, their bodies should be able to transform and get stronger as they go. So,
yeah, I've yet to see a guy, and I just keep saying this, that his career totally didn't work out solely because he didn't add strength. It's usually one of a series of issues, but it's rare that that's the challenge. For a player like that is like, oh, the shooting came around, the handball handling came around. Oh, but he never got strong enough. So like I think if you trust your strength and conditioning thing, that's one of the easiest things to add. Like if you put in the work, you will get strong. And obviously different frames have a limit on how much mass they can add and things like that. But, at least functional strength won't be a limiting factor for him longer term, I don't think.
Yeah. And to your point about strength, you think go back a few years, guys like Richard Hamilton, for example, who was skinny weak. I mean, that didn't deter him from being a very effective player on a championship team. Being an important offensive player. I mean, I've talked about this before, but I had a great conversation with Rick Carlisle back when he was coach of the Pistons, and it started with me asking the question: why was Richard Hamilton a bad defender in Washington, but he's a good one for you guys? And Carlisle went through a very long explanation, but part of it was just talking about how he'd gotten stronger and so was better able to execute. But also Hamilton was just following their rules, their defensive rules, their force rules, and so he. Carlisle's point was that virtually anyone could be a good defender in their system if they would just play with effort and follow their rules. And Hamilton played hard and got stronger and followed their rules. So he became an effective defender. And Carlisle explained he had built his defense around, Ben Wallace, and they had another guy, Clifford Robinson, I think, at the time. But he put the defense together around those guys, and then later they got Rasheed Wallace in there too. Although that was with Larry Brown, so still, that was a heck of a team.
They asked Rip about it one time, the same question, like, why did you defend in Portland? And he said, well, one, I didn't defend in Washington because no one in Washington asked me to play any defense. And two, once I got to Portland, once I got to Detroit, Ben Wallace and a couple of other guys cornered me in the locker room and said, that shit won't fly here. You will do whatever you have to do, like fight tooth and nail, claw, scratch, kick, to at least make people work on the offensive end. And he said, so I used to not cut his fingernails to at least make guys think twice about, work on him a little bit. All right.
That was the story. That was the story, by the way, about Darrell Walker. That one reason he had some effect on Jordan was that, and other players around the league, was that his fingernails were long and apparently
just scratch the shit
hard,
out.
And he would scratch people. And when Darrell Walker ended up on the Bulls team with Jordan, and Jordan insisted that he cut his fingernails, and he was never the same again. I suspect it was probably for other reasons, but still, it is a funny story.
It's bad enough if you're scratching up Jordan a couple of times a year, but now you got to do it every day in practice. He probably just wanted to survive his practices.
Yeah.
Ite says not a bad pick of Riley at 21. Yeah, I agree. Luke said so many young perimeter players, literally only one big. Al asked any of Asa, Fleming, or Powell available at 43. You never know. I mean, I would doubt it personally, and I would think that'd be a miss from other teams, but I'm not against it. Luke Feldman said the only thing thinner than our young big men depth is Will Riley. That's a good one.
It's a good line. I like it. Here's the thing. I'm not worried about their big man depth and all that, because I think you can find backup centers. I don't think that's too big a concern, and they still potentially could have Richaun Holmes under contract. But I think also they still have a second-round pick. They still have undrafted free agents. You can find guys. So I'm not too concerned about that. Let's see. There's pick in.
You can go get Alex Len if we wanted to for a second run through.
And so it looks like he might be going to Atlanta. Maybe. Oh, there's a proposed trade. Apparently, he might end up in Brooklyn.
Wow. All right. He seems like a Brooklyn-y pick, so I'm not too shocked by that.
I will be very curious to see what he's able to do and become in the NBA. We've talked about him a bit already, so I'm not going to just repeat it.
Yeah, they're a blank slate team, so I don't mind swinging big for a guy with some upside. Let's see. Al said Jaren Jackson should be our target next year's free agency. Could be an interesting one. Thomas R said we had the chance to draft Rasheer Fleming or Danny Wolf, two good power forwards that averaged 8.5 rebounds a game, and you choose Will Riley. Who the hell is he? Again, skinny wing freshman for Illinois. But I would say, like, we've already talked about the skinny thing, but if a guy can average 12 and 4 in the Big 12, in the Big 10 as a freshman, imagine what he'll do when he actually bulks up. So I think that's not the thing I would worry about, as he was productive despite being undersized. So we'll be fine. Let's see. Luke Feldman said really need to make a move for Niederhauser. Wonder if they'll pick for Riley has any implications on Bilal's future. He hasn't really developed all that much. I just think this is every good team needs wings, so we'll just stockpile as many of them as we can. I would think his more competition is somebody like Keyshawn than it is Coulibaly, personally.
Yeah. Also, I would say when we talk about Coulibaly's development, I've done a few things with this, talking about projecting players out in terms of their career trajectories and all that kind of stuff. And Coulibaly actually is right on schedule, a little ahead of schedule in terms of his development. I agree with some that he didn't make as much of a leap as I hoped he would make, but he did play better than he did as a rookie. Mm-hmm. And the amount that he played better was actually a little above average for players of his age when he came into the league. So in other words, if Coulibaly continues on the trajectory that he's on, he should still be a really good player. I talked about this before, but Koulibaly, his career forecast, it forecasts a high for him that would be, like probably, a multi-time all-star, at least level of player, and potentially, cracking all NBA for a couple of years. Sarr, where his rookie year landed, if he just develops, has a normal career trajectory from this point, he would have multiple years being an all NBA level player. Not necessarily first team, but second, third, something like that is certainly quite reasonable. So, it's possible that the Wizards have a couple of really solid building blocks already, and it's just hard to say because they're so young,
so early. Yeah.
and so much of it depends on how much work they're going to do. So,
To me, Koulibaly is at least an all defense kind of calibered, one of the two teams at some point in his career. And if he does more than that for you, and it's just more than a serviceable offensive player, I think that's a really, really good player, like you just said. And we saw some flashes of that. There was a little stretch of the season here, like a couple games in a row, like maybe 6 or 7 of them were like, oh, okay, like this is the jump. And it just wasn't sustainable. Different, vets moved in and out of the lineup. And then ultimately, he got injured and we didn't get to see the full scope. I think this year is the year, we should expect to see that big jump. I think third years are always big for guys. So that'll be interesting.
Yeah. This would be the year where I would expect Koulibaly to, make a leap above average. His first season, he was a little bit better than replacement level. Last season, he made a solid jump up to being like a useful NBA player. And this would be the year when you'd want him to continue on the trajectory, being better than average. And like I said, Sarr is already, kind of ahead of schedule, if you will, but he's potentially, if he does the work, if he develops, blah, 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 he could be really good.
City of Oak says, I think the concern with skinny guys is that a skinny guy is unlikely to be an MFer, which we know Matt talks a lot about the Wizards needing. I would like to see that. I would like to see it be in the front court as well, like an Isaiah Stewart, just to be who's our brawler enforcer type. But I don't think skinny means you can't be an MFer personally. It's just a different.
Yeah, I think
that's a mindset thing. Yeah,
but a skinny guy can't be. I mean, Chet Holmgren is as skinny as they come, and he's got plenty of MFer in him. Yeah. He's not strong, but he is combative. He's feisty. He battles. I mean, I saw multiple times in the finals where he got just blasted off his spot by Pacers, and he just kept recovering and coming back into it. And the toughness and the willing to battle, it's not, you don't necessarily need muscle. You can be skinny and be willing to fight and battle. So, I think about, I don't know if you remember, I think it was Tyrone Hill, very skinny guy. And he was total MFer. I mean, he battled, was physical and tough and all those kinds of things. So yeah, you can be skinny and still have that in you.
I think sometimes it's the smaller guys or the skinnier guys that have had to, people pick on them and shit like that on the court because of those things that have the attitude that we're talking about here, because they've had to, to compensate for that.
Yeah.
DC Onion says, I effing hate Danny Ainge for stealing our guy Ace Bailey. So painful for being a Wizards fan, gut wrenching, and is out on the draft. That's a bummer. Oz says Riley and Keyshawn George are the same player. I don't agree with Oz that they're the same player. I do think they're probably the kind of guys that are competing for, similar rotation spots here longer term. That 6'8" switchable guy. I think Keyshawn profiles more as a ball mover, shooter. I think Riley was better as a slasher. Hopefully finisher. So I'm not really totally in lockstep with him, but Asa
Newell finally selected by New Orleans, but apparently that pick is being traded to Atlanta.
That's the one of the
I swear to God, I feel like Atlanta has been involved with every pick so far.
Yeah, right. They're moving around a good amount here, but that's a really good fit for them. Clint Capella can't be there forever, and they need somebody else other than Okongwu, who they're going to have to probably pay at some point in time. So, yeah, we'll see. Yusuf Rizkala said, "Time to riot." I'm not out on it. I had guys higher than Riley, but this is exactly where I had him on the board. So, not a bad thing. Newell, the guy who just went, I think is going to make us regret this one a little bit personally, but that's ultimately how it goes at Sleeper Wizards. That's a lot of emojis. Yeah, somebody is fired up here in the chat. We'll keep it positive here. I think this front office has done enough to engender some goodwill from us in terms of their draft picks. I think more of them than not have showed promise. So we'll continue to just assume they know what they're doing until proven otherwise. Which hopefully is never the case. All right, let's see. Al, good night, buddy. Appreciate you for tuning in here. Yeah, we'll see how it goes. And then City of Oaks, ultimately this draft will be defined by the Johnson pick. Yeah, agreed. I think
absolutely.
It's nice if you're a guy at 21 turns into something, but I think feel reasonably confident all three of guys last year are at least serviceable NBA players and rotational level guys. Keyshawn has to shoot the ball at some point, but if he does that, I think that shouldn't be a problem. So if he can get three guys in a relatively weak draft, he gets a little slack in this year's draft here for me as well. If Trey's good and we don't get much from Riley, like that's not the worst thing in the world for you.
Yeah. I mean, when you're picking in that 18 to 20 something range, if you get something, that's good. But you're still, the odds are not great that you're going to get like a really good player in those spots. If you can get a guy who plays 12 to 15 minutes a game, you've done okay.
Sure.
So if they get that with Will Riley, fine. I do think that Asa Newell is a guy who has a chance to be very good and to be a significant player. So I'm a little disappointed Wizards didn't pick him. I think they might end up. I don't know if they will regret it, but I will.
Right. Yeah. Same. Yeah. I think. Asa and Rashir were the two very clear next guys left up on.
I feel like OKC, who apparently is going to be picking that they're going to take Rashir Fleming. I'm just going to be like, come on.
We'll just let the rich get richer here. That's sort of how
I could see them also taking somebody like Bojan Markovic just as a stash.
Right.
I could see that. I could see them. I can't. The one guy I don't see them really picking would be like a Jace Richardson. Although I think he'd be a nice player for them, but I just don't see that happening. He's small for the position, so I don't think they do that.
Hugo Gonzalez would be an interesting one, another European guy that I think wants to come over, but they could probably talk themselves into it. Although, Shams just said the Kings are trading for the number 24 pick to take Nick Clifford.
Okay, Nick's interesting. Hugo Gonzalez, I have he's one of the lowest rated players in this year's draft. I've got him in the 70s.
Wow. So, shit. Okay, there you go.
So, and that which again does not mean that he couldn't be, because I wrote about this. Alex Caruso is another guy who rated pretty far down, and
he didn't do anything in college in terms of production.
Well, it's funny. I look back at his numbers, and he actually had a surprising number of assists for his position, and of course a lot of steals, which you would expect for the guy that he became. But overall, I thought he deserved to be undrafted. And but obviously he turned out to be a really good pro because he got to the right spot, and it took him like 3 years of G League play before he became a full-time NBA player. It took him a while to develop, to work, to figure out what his role was going to be.
Yeah, he was clearly a guy that you can't judge the mindset at all, right? And he said all the right things about people are drafting the janitor, not the CEO, so I had to prepare for that. And he gets it. You've heard a couple other guys say similar things, but he knew what was up. And Just circling back to this too, like Desan just said in the chat, what was the point of taking Will Riley when we already have Keyshawn George? They're the exact same player. In what way, other than the same height? I just don't really fully get that necessarily. Like with Will Riley, you got a guy that averaged almost 18 points for 36 minutes, 6 rebounds. Keyshawn averaged 11 points, 4.5 rebounds. So not really the same. Keyshawn was much better from a steals perspective. He also had a lot more turnovers. He fouled a lot more. Will Riley assists a little less, but the stocks aren't very good. I would imagine that's probably the shooting percentages lowered him the most on Kevin's overall metrics. He was a shot better from the field than Keyshawn did. Keyshawn shot a lot better from 3 and the free throw line, but Keyshawn profiled as a better shooter pretty much from day one. But Riley was a more productive college player. He had better offensive win shares, better PER. It's just, I don't think they even play similarly personally, other than they're the same height. So if every player that's the same height is the same player, yeah, I mean, I guess they're the same player then. Like, I don't.
Even if they are similar,
Sure.
it's really okay. I mean, teams play, multiple wings together. I mean, so we might as well. We have a second here, so why don't we go? My view on positions is there really isn't such thing as point guard, shooting guard, small forward, power forward, center. That used to be the way things were. I think now what there are guards, there are wings, there are forwards, and there are centers. The guards are like the smaller guys that can't really guard up to like a 6'7", wing. The true wings. The wings are the guys who are like the 2s and the 2-3s. Can't really play point guard, not really big enough to play against bigs, but they're the wings. So if you're looking at the Wizards, like Bub Carrington and Jordan Poole were guards, right? Wings would be guys like Bilal Coulibaly, Corey Kispert, Keyshawn George. Those are wings. Forwards are more like they could play either 3 or 4, 3 or 4, and could even slide up to potentially the center. So for the Wizards, you get a guy like Kyle Kuzma is a forward, right? I'm just trying to think of who else. But Kuzma is kind of the prototypical forward, where he's got some of the skills of a wing. He's also got more size. If you even stuck him in as a small ball center, or he switched on to a center, you wouldn't feel like, okay, he's totally overmatched in the post, right? And then you've got your bigs, and your bigs are guys like probably Sarr is going to be a big, Jokic, obviously, Valanciunas, Embiid. Those are guys who really have to play inside. They're more of the rim protector, rebounder type. So I think you got really 4 positions, and you don't have to play somebody from all those. So you can have lineups with a guard and 3 wings and a forward, right? You can do all kinds of different things, and we saw that plenty with OKC in the finals. With Indiana did the same. I mean,
they have like 4 guards and a big, like at certain
right.
times.
I mean, Nembhard and Nesmith were very similar players, and they played just fine together. And I think the key is that you just have certain kinds of work that needs to get done, and if you team up, if you work as a team, you can get those things done. So if you're playing 4 guys who are 6'7" and a guy who's 6'3", you've got to get back and crash the boards and do the defensive rebounding, do some rim protection. It's got to be some gang defense. Or if you're playing 3 guys who are 6'10", then you've got to work together to pass the ball up, maybe against pressure or something like that. So because you may not have like the pure break the pressure kind of ball handler. So anyway, the point being that having multiple guys who have similar games is perfectly fine. Having guys who are about the same size, same physical profile is also fine, because you can then play really aggressive switching defense and really rain terror. And you saw again, OKC did that. They had plenty of guys who could fight through, but then they also had lineups where they switched everything, kept everything in front of them, swarmed when somebody did dribble penetrate, and really made things difficult on opposing offenses. And I think that you could see very much the same thing with the Wizards. So, yeah,
agreed. I have no problem with them literally drafting all the wings in the world, but they don't play the same. So to Money Man Stevens' point, apparently I'm coping because they quote have the same skill sets and same height. They don't, because one was drafted as a shooter, secondary playmaker, except he had a lot of high turnovers because he didn't really have that good a feel for the game.
I'm sorry, I'm chuckling right now at Ben's little grenade throws. They're very funny. They're both exactly like Antoine Carr. It's great. Hey, Jace Richardson got picked, and it looks like he's going to Orlando, which I freaking love for him.
Yeah, they needed a guard, so they needed guards plural. So he might actually play some meaningful minutes for them right away. And honestly, they have the positional size to make up for him being a little smaller too. So I think that's a particularly smart pick. For the squad here.
If I played General Zod, yes, I wish.
Yeah, wouldn't mind the paycheck from that, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so Jace Richardson, he's little. He doesn't have his dad's athleticism yet. He was really productive at Michigan State, and I had him, I think, 10th overall. I think this is a great pick for Orlando, and I really hope he gets a chance to play there, because I think he can definitely really shoot it, and Orlando really needs some shooting, especially after they blew that pick on Jet Howard.
Yeah, that one didn't work out particularly well for them. So it is what it is. But yeah, this is it's been an overall fun draft. So
yeah. They're showing right now on ESPN highlights of his dad winning dunk contests, and his dad was a spectacular athlete.
Yeah, we talked about this before, but keep an eye on Jackson Richardson, his under 16-year-old brother here, who is like 6'5" and already dunk contest caliber athlete. So poor Jace got mom's genes there or something. All right,
so
Kevin,
we got a question here. If any of our guys are still left on the board, strong favorites. So you want to go first on that?
Yeah, let's see here. We both have talked at length about Rasheer Fleming. He's the highest guy left on my board here. I do wonder if the limited playmaking is, it's what ultimately holding him back. I have Liam McNeely 19. I have John Tonje 25. I have Eric Dixon 28. Danny Wolf 29. Jameer Watkins 30. So plenty of guys that if they took in the first round here, if they had another pick, wouldn't be the worst in the world. How about you, Ken?
Yeah, so Rasheer Fleming for sure. Duke Tiero from Arkansas, I liked him. Somebody, not necessarily that I would want the Wizards to pick, but just somebody I think is going to make a good pro, at least for a few years, is Johni Broome. He's still available. Markovich, I mentioned earlier, he looks pretty interesting. Chaz Lanier, athletic wing from Tennessee. Again, a little older, pretty interesting. I like John Tonje as well. Elijah Martin, as long as we're talking about these older guys. He won't even be picked in round 2. But I do like this kid, and I hope the Wizards can pick him up as an undrafted free agent. That's Kobe Johnson. We talked about him a bit on a previous podcast, Matt and I did. But Kobe Johnson is a guy I think he reminds me of Alex Caruso in that Kobe Johnson was a 3-time all-conference defender in 2 different conferences. The big ones, I think it was Big Ten and the Pac-12. I don't remember which order, but he's low usage. But the shots go in, and he's got some playmaking, and he's a terrific defender. And I just would love to see him get a shot somewhere. It might take him a couple of years, but I do wonder if he can translate that defense to the NBA.
Yeah, it's worth a shot. And again, younger brother of Jalen Johnson, so everybody loves NBA pedigree in a family. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
Kevin, I have not eaten yet, and the Wizards are not going to pick again. We're at 3 hours. I think we're probably pretty safe to call this one.
Right.
Maybe we can circle up after tomorrow's pick and see what we think of the guy they take 43rd, or if they do other crazy things in the second round here. Any parting thoughts, just summing up how you feel about this overall draft for the Wizards so far?
So overall, I mean, I think the Wizards have done pretty well. Trey Johnson seems like a solid pick, and Will Riley also seems okay. So I have no concerns about either of those. Well, I wouldn't say no concerns, but I'm okay. They both seem like they have a chance to become solid pros. And so we'll see what the Wizards do in round 2. I'm going to stick around on playback till the end of the first round. So if guys want to pop over there, I'd welcome the company. And but also understand if you prefer not to stick around. I don't object to that at all. I may take a short break because I had a slice of pizza, but I could use some more food here.
I think that's reasonable. You've more than earned it after 3 hours. Great work, as always. It was fun getting prepped for this draft with you, so thanks for making as much time as you did. Go over to playback.tv. If you search Bullets Forever, it'll come up. It'll take you right to Kevin and the rest of the stream there, where you can really lock in. And we'll do more sort of post-draft breakdown here. Obviously, Kevin, I appreciate your time. Chat, I appreciate you guys for sticking with us. A lot of you have been on here from the start. You're troopers. Thank you guys so much for doing that. Didn't do any charity fundraising aspect this year just because didn't have time to set it up this year. But maybe we'll do something after Summer League or whatever to throw a little goodwill back into the universe from the Wizards fan base here.
Yeah.
But thanks for checking in with us, everybody. Again, rate, review, subscribe. But please hit that like button for us down in the comments if you don't mind here. Kevin, thanks, man. Talk to you soon.
Hey, this was so much fun. I love doing this every year. So
yeah, we'll be back next year. I'm already committing Kevin again. Hopefully it's with a top 3 pick in a loaded top couple picks to talk about here.
I don't know. I'm hoping the Wizards pick 30th.
There you go. All right, because we've won the championship. I wouldn't be mad about that either. Either way, we'll take it. All right, everybody. You know the drill. Peace out. We'll catch y'all next time.